Welcome, everyone. We're going to re-adjourn the City Council meeting. Will everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Can we do anything about that? That will be really annoying. It's a little better, yeah. Okay, Regina, can we do roll call, please?
Testing. Councilmember Clarici.
Here.
Councilmember Gottberg.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Vice Mayor No.
Here?
And Mayor Saragosa will be noted as absent.
Yes. Okay, great. We have no ceremonial matters today, so we will move to closed session report.
Yes, out of closed session today, council did give direction to council as to matters to proceed with.
Thank you. We will move to number 5, adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes unanimously. We will move on to announcements and presentations to the public. Brief comments from the City Council. We'll start with Mr. Yarbrough.
Well, about the only thing is National Night Out was a lot of fun. Had a great time with that for my first time being on City Council. So, yeah, great job by the PD and fire department bringing all of us out, having a great time, getting to visit the neighborhoods. It was great. Had great turnout, so enjoyed that quite a bit. Yeah, great to see all the staff get paired up and had a good time.
Nicole?
So I met with Mayor Saragosa with the folks that put on the Sugar Skull Art Walk for the Day of the Dead. So I think they will be giving us a presentation at our next City Council meeting. But they got some grant funding, and it sounds like it'll be a great event this year. And then also had a great time at National Night Out.
John?
National Night Out is great. It's always good to go around the neighborhoods. It's always good to see how the community embraces our employees, PD, the fire department, staff. It just shows that we're really lucky in this town to have such good folks working for us and with us on everything. So it's always gratifying. So anyway, it was very good.
I'll just echo that. Great National Night Out. And I also went on the Chamber of Commerce mission study, which was a great trip. And actually, I went and visited family afterwards in McKinney, Texas, and visited their downtown, which gave me a lot of great ideas. They were founded in 1848, so kind of more similar things to work with. But that's that, and we will keep moving along. Is Joe Patterson here? Okay, great.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This podium isn't made for vertically challenged people like myself, but hopefully you can still see me over it. Well, thanks for having me. I just came from Sacramento. Not my favorite place to be. Actually, I enjoy being in the district, and we've had a month off so we can spend time in the district. But the next month is going to be the scariest time of year for Californians when we're back in session for the last month. But so for those of you I haven't met, my name is Joe Patterson. I'm the state assembly member representing this area. It's an honor to do so. I live in, and I served on the Rockland City Council for 6 years. I know a lot of the things that you're doing. In some ways, I miss serving on a city council because you can, obviously, you're close to what people are doing. You live in the community, and you know, obviously that's where you raise your families and work and live and all those sorts of things. So appreciate everything you're doing, the time. I always tell people being on a city council is basically a volunteer job, and but you do it because you love your community. And so it's So I do miss it in a way, but now I have the honor of being in the State Assembly, and it's been a lot of fun. My wife and I have lived in Placer County now since 2008, and we do own property here in El Dorado County, and it's been fun. I think the district's a really great district because while portions of Placer County and El Dorado County actually have different cultures, as you know, depending on where you're at, the counties are a lot alike. I don't have pieces of Sacramento, for example. The issues in Sacramento are a lot different than we have in Placer and El Dorado counties. So it's great to represent this district, and I can be here anytime. If something comes up, always great to be here. But we're working a lot in the Capitol, but I just wanted to come here and introduce myself. Most of the legislation that I'm working on in the Capitol actually comes from people within the district, whether it's other city councils, or I work a lot with the Placer County District Attorney and doing some things for some firefighters as well. So whatever I can do to assist the city, I'm always interested in doing that, and obviously the residents, but sometimes there are little simple things, and I'll give you one example. I'm doing legislation for the city of Rockland right now, Surplus Land Act. You know, they're gonna build an overpass on a particular parcel someday, but in the meantime, they want to generate revenue with this little bit of parcel until they raise the $20 million it's going to cost. Well, the Surplus Land Act prevents them from doing so without first offering it for affordable housing, by the way. And Rockland is very friendly towards housing development, although this particular lot they want to maintain for future overpass. And so I'm doing legislation at their request to exempt this from the Surplus Land Act for for up to 15 years, basically. So nearby car dealerships can just use it as a parking lot, but I had to run legislation to do this. So, but this all came out of previous state laws, as you know, but it was a concern that the city of Rockland had, and so we're doing the legislation to try to solve it. But I brought my chief of staff. She's back here in the red. You can't miss her because she's wearing a bright red coat. Her name's Tiffany Sadoff. She's a local elected herself, and she sits on a school board in Rockland, so she knows a lot of what's been going on. But I'm happy. I know this isn't, I'm very clear with this time of the agenda not necessarily being where decisions are made and things like that, but if there's any questions, happy to take them. My goal at the end of the day is, I think a lot of the stuff we vote on in Sacramento, there will be obviously impacts on people's lives, but it is not the most important thing that I do. The most important thing that I do is represent the people who live in our community and making sure that it's a great place to live, work, enjoy the activities that we have here. And sometimes that gets lost in Sacramento, but that's why I enjoy most being in the district whenever I can, and I try to escape as often as I can, escape the swamp. So, but with that, happy if you have a question or something, happy to take it, but just really looking forward to working with you in the future, and I wanted to be here personally to introduce myself.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. We appreciate your time and your service. Do we have any questions from the council? None? Okay. Well, we have a fancy plaque here to present you with.
Oh, you know what? I've got to say this. Thank you. I've actually been saying I've been kind of joking, oh yeah, these legislators have these plaques in the office of where they represent. I want one in my office. I don't have one, even from the city that I sat on the city council of. And so you literally will be the first city to have it hanging in my
We are a step above. Oh.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We will move on to the next item, 7, consent calendar. And Any questions, comments, items to pull?
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 7.5 for further discussion.
Okay, we will pull 7.5 then.
Yes.
Anything else?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, we will open this to public comment for all items except 7.5, which we will discuss later.
I want to congratulate the city on their contract for the goat grazing. That really needs to be done. And so we'll get Patty's goats back on the job. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to public comment.
Vote on the remainder of the
Oh,
consent
yeah, we gotta
calendar.
vote. How about that? Okay,
I'll move the rest of the consent calendar excluding item 7.5.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We should probably do a roll call.
Okay,
vote.
roll call.
money?
Okay. Money.
Money.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to public comment, non-agendized items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is in the subject matter and jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor or vice mayor tonight may reserve the right to limit speaker time to 3 minutes. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments that are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Oral communications. Does anyone have a comment? Wow. Okay, we will move on to 8 point, oh, okay.
Neither had to be one.
That's okay.
So mostly I'm coming up here just to try to seek some clarification. Specifically, I actually came to discuss agenda item 7.5. So since it's pulled from the agenda this evening, is there going to be a future date that's on the calendar?
We're going to discuss that shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not tonight then?
No, tonight.
Tonight,
Yes,
under-
tonight. We will, after we get through item 9. So our very next item, we'll discuss 7.5.
Okay. So I'll sit back down to do my comment later. I wasn't sure. I'm sorry.
okay.
I just need clarification. Okay. I'll give this. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Ruth Michelson. Just a quick comment that I wanted to make about one of your commissions, PEAK, Placerville Economic Advisory Council. I wrote them a letter saying that Friday at noon is a really difficult time to attend. I work and many merchants are working. I asked them if they would consider changing their meeting time to either an evening like this or possibly at 8:30 before, businesses normally open at 10 or 11. And they wouldn't consider that request. And I think that it's pretty evident by the lack of people who attend their meetings that it's not a very convenient meeting. And so it's just kind of discouraging because many of the things they do discuss are of interest to myself and to other merchants, but yet we can't be there to hear those items being discussed. So they're your commission. I just thought I'd let you know. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ruth. Anyone else?
Good evening, Kathy Lishman. I agree with Ruth, and I was at the meeting when they decided to have their meetings on Fridays at noon. I think it's a terrible time, except for maybe the group. And I think every other Friday, the staff that has to attend, it's their Friday off, so I don't know who gets shortchanged there. But I just think it's not a good time for the public to be involved.
Thank you for your comments, Kathy. All right, anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to 8.2, written communications. Regina? Oh, gotta pass the mic.
No, Madam Vice Mayor, there were no items of written communication. However, there was one item received for item 7.5. However, that is on the agenda. Thank you.
Great. We will close that and move on to item 9, which are the pulled consent calendar items. We have one item, which is 7.5, consideration to amendment Title 10, zoning of the Placerville City Code, second reading to address required 2021-29 housing element implementation program C2. Accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, ADUs, JADUs, to conform with new state regulations and find that ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act under 15282 of the CEQA guidelines and pursuant to the Public Resources Code, Section 21080.17. Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. This zone change is a request by city staff to amend Title 10 of the City Code to comply with all state laws which have been approved by the governor since the last ordinance update regarding ADUs back in April of 2023. These changes will bring our code into compliance with regards to the development of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. Since Senate Bill 229, Assembly Bill 494, the state has enacted Senate Bill 13, Assembly Bill 68, 587, 670, 671, and 881. These were enacted in 2019, and then we have Assembly Bill 3182 enacted in 2020, and Assembly Bill 345 enacted in 2021, and Assembly Bill 221, and Senate Bill 897 that were also enacted in 2022. This ordinance will bring the city code into compliance with all the mentioned legislation. The Planning Commission considered the zoning code amendments back in January 17th of 2023, approving staff's recommended changes to the code, and they forwarded a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the changes that's before you. With that, staff is recommending that the City Council waive the second reading of an ordinance amending Title 10. This would amend code sections 10-1-4, the definitions section, 10-4-4, parking and loading, repeal and reenact 10-4-12 regarding accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, amend 10-5-4, that's the estate residential zone, single-family acre residential zone, 10-5-6, the R1 20,000 single-family residential zone, 10-5-7, the single-family residential zone, 10,000 square feet, that's 10-5-8, the R1 6,000 single-family residential zone, 10-5-9, the R2 low-density multifamily residential zone, 10-5-10, R3 medium-density multifamily residential zone, 10-5-11, R-4, the medium-density residential zone, 10-5-12, R-5, high-density multifamily residential zone, 10-5-13, BP, the business professional zone, 10-5-14, the CBD or Central Business District Zone, 10-5-15, the C or Commercial Zone, 10-5-16, the CC or Convenience Commercial Zone, 10-5-17, the Highway Commercial Zone, 10-5-18, the Heavy Commercial Zone, 10-5-19, the Industrial Zone, 10-5-20, Public Facilities Zone, and 10-5-24, the Housing Opportunity Overlay Zone of Title 10. And the main purpose for that is any of these zones that happen to contain either allow by right a single-family residential unit, or any of these zones contain a single-family residential, they could then opt to have an ADU or accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit. That's why I went through and mentioned the breadth of these changes. So with that, again, staff is recommending to adopt said ordinance. as required by our general plan. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council at this moment?
Yeah, after doing a little bit of research and getting some comments from constituents, my question is based on the ADU Section 4, Paragraph T, and on the junior 80 units, Section 7, Paragraph H, having to do with the vacation or short-term rental implements of 31 days. All ADUs shall not be rented for a period of less than 31 days, and the same for the JADUs. It seems that the county actually has this set up a little different for less than 31 days for the STRs, and I'm kind of wondering why the city isn't providing the same opportunities for our citizens as the rest of the county is getting when it comes to these short-term rental restrictions.
I would say that the city has a severe housing shortage and affordability problem. There are people that live and work in this town, they can't afford to live here, our workers on Main Street, in our restaurants. And this isn't a new item. We went through a very exhaustive process of a general plan update, an update to our housing element that went through numerous hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Council. And I will read Program F-7 regarding short-term rental regulation. It's out of our general plan. It says the city will continue to develop administrative procedures for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement of unpermitted short-term rentals in residential zones and may consider development of short-term rentals within owner-occupied units when demonstrated that there is no loss to the city's available housing stock.
Okay.
So to comment on that, the city did consider an amendment to our code where we allow short-term rentals in the commercial zone, the central business district, and in highway commercial zones, since those zones do contain single-family residential units. If they want to convert those to short-term rentals, they can, and we have done that. So that we did permit. But the purpose of having accessory dwelling units is to create housing, not lodging. So the city is being required by the state to reduce development standards such as parking, such as setbacks, reduction in impact fees, reduction in park fees, and the like. And so it was felt that that is to promote housing as opposed to lodging. So I'm going to read a little bit more out of our general plan. It says the increasing prevalence of short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods contributes to a decrease in the number of housing units available for full-time occupancy, contributing to gentrification and the increased risk of displacement, particularly for lower-income renter households. The objective in our adopted general plan says we would adopt zoning amendments to prohibit transient short-term rentals in residential zones and to allow them in commercial zones, which we have done already, and to establish a regulatory framework and administrative process for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement. So it's been discussed with this council previously that we would be looking at coming back to you with an amendment to allow short-term rentals and owner-occupied single-family housing. So again, that wouldn't affect accessory dwelling units. That would be somebody with a desire to rent out, say, a bedroom for less than 31 days, as opposed to over 30 days, having roommates, say, for example. So I just wanted to point that out, that this ordinance before you is implementing our general plan that has already gone through an exhaustive review process. This isn't a new issue.
Thank you, Pierre. Any other questions from council? John? No.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, get this straight in my head. Okay, so it seems that we have a process that if somebody has a room in their home, they can apply for a permit to go ahead and, I believe, use that as like an STR, a hosted rental, correct?
We don't have that in place yet.
Okay.
The ordinance that came before you more recently was to allow the short-term rentals in commercial zones, and we allow them in the 3 commercial zones that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so this is for commercial areas only.
So let me add to that. So we agreed at that time that we were going to come back with something to address residential zones, and as he has discussed here.
Okay.
But we have not brought that piece back yet. So currently, in accordance with ordinances you've adopted, it's not allowed at all in residential zones, any type of short-term rental
Okay,
currently.
within the city only.
Correct, within the city.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody good? Okay, we will open this to public comment.
Okay, so I'm just kidding. I'll stay up here. I'm just kidding. Trying to have fun here. Okay, so I received a letter from the city. I rent a room in my home. It's not a JADU. It's not an ADU. It's a room. And I received a letter, and it didn't say that I was violating the short-term rental. It said that I was operating a commercial business out of my home. So if I go to El Dorado or a lot of other areas, it says that short-term rentals are not considered a commercial business. And I'm kind of like, well, what is a commercial business? Can I not teach piano lessons out of my home or work from home or run a consulting business from home? And so that is allowed. You know, I think there was something about 4 cars, less than 4 cars. So anyway, why am I getting a violation that has no code on it, but I'm not being cited for what you just said, Cleve, is that it's a violation according to the short-term rental. I'm running a commercial business. Why was that not cited? You know, and so anyway, I don't want to argue with anybody about this, but about the semantics of it. But I have been, and I've said this before, I started cleaning houses in 1999 up in Lake Tahoe. And that was when people would take a piece of wood, put it up on their wood deck and say, would you like to rent our cabin next to Heavenly, right? And I've watched Craigslist come, and I've watched Airbnb, and I've seen the evolution of, and I saw what it did to South Lake. But that is South Lake. It's a party town. That's what they're doing. If someone's in my room, they're not going to be partying. You know, even in Kirkwood when I did cleaning, most of the people that rented there, they were coming, Kirkwood is specific. People go there to skate, so they're in bed by 10. It's not creating a nuisance. I have plenty of parking. There's nothing that is impeding. I'm not hurting anyone. None of my neighbors are concerned about it. And if I were to be shut down, you would cause financial harm to me. And I'm not stacking cash, you know, I'm actually getting by. And we talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing also means that you guys help us keep it affordable. I can pay my mortgage. It's all the other things that's killing me right now. My trash, every year I'm getting $10 to death on my trash, my water, my electricity. Those are the things that are hurting me. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I was lucky to get in and buy a home that with a mortgage, I could afford to work at McDonald's. But the people that are making it unaffordable are the people making the laws. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments, Mandy.
Hi, I'm Maureen Dion Perry. Good evening to council and staff. I am here representing Housing El Dorado, a local nonprofit working to increase affordable housing in our area. As Mr. Rivas said, we have a serious lack of affordable housing here. people who live and work here cannot afford to, people who work here cannot afford to live here. I have personally spoken with a number of Placerville city employees who cannot afford to live here. They have to commute from down the hill up here. And then we have young people who, of course, cannot afford to live here. Housing El Dorado is currently working on a project to accelerate the development of affordable housing with ADU and JADU construction. We're very excited about this. We've received a grant from the Women's Fund to do just this. I urge you to support the ADU ordinance to create affordable housing for our community and not to create short-term rentals for tourists. We have hotels for that. In addition, we would suggest that the ordinance not require the owner to live on the property. We feel that property owners who rent out already may also be interested in adding an ADU to their property for further rental. So we hope that you will consider this in your deliberations and thoughts on this, and I'm happy to address any questions or comments that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen. I sound like a frog tonight, sorry.
I think this is on. Okay, good evening, everybody. Ruth Carter, Placerville. I am a real estate broker. I would like to add in a couple of thoughts on the matter. First off, with regard to affordable housing, I think that amnesty for owners such as Mandy, and I'm sure that there are others in the room as I look around, would be important if for some reason you decided to have any repercussions towards these owners. Owner-occupied properties that have ADUs are a net benefit to our community, and I'd like to expand on that. The importance of family flexibility cannot be overstated. Short-term rentals offer a unique and invaluable solution to meet the ever-changing needs of families. I personally have a double amputee father, and if I could right now, which I can't right now, I would build a JADU attached to my house and take care of him. I know that, Mandy in particular, I happen to know her dad's aging and she's waiting for the call any day. And the flexibility in her schedule, she could cancel her bookings and move him in if she needed to. This is essential. With the rising cost of our fire insurance, with the rising cost of all of the things, there needs to be an owner occupancy exemption, period. It would be a failure to our community to not do that. I have clients personally that they're elderly, they can't take care of themselves, they want to stay in the area. They can't take care of 5 acres or 10 acres. They got to sell their house. Where are they going to go? They can't afford to buy a house at the price that they're selling right now. It makes sense for them to rent a room in a house. So the lodger rules do apply. And California has lodger laws. It makes it very easy to get rid of people that are undesirable as well. When they violate house rules and have substance abuse problems and aren't going with the laws that are already on the books. You have an owner-occupant already there, not somebody that's an hour away. I think that everybody should be able to have ADUs and JADUs on their property. I think affordable housing is a real issue. And I think that owner-occupied in particular, having as short-term rentals, adds value to our community. When people go to stay at the Carey House Hotel, can they take their animal with them? No. Do they have stairs? Yes. If they want to come and visit us and we all live in town, they've got to figure out somewhere else in Folsom or, maybe now with the new hotel coming in, but do you think they're going to let pets in that brand new place? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But my point is, it's a lot of the times more affordable also for families to visit family members when they're renting a vacation rental unit versus having to go and spend, hundreds of dollars per night on a hotel. Sometimes people get a better discount by renting a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time. So these are all considerations. I had a big thing written up, but I'm gonna accentuate too, this is a net benefit to our city in bringing in dollars as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Hello. the other Ruth, Ruth Michelson. I'm a little confused because I thought that the subject tonight was ADUs. Yes, ADUs is what we're talking about, and junior ADUs, not, I mean, we've mixed in this other topic about renting rooms in a person's home and such, but that's not what this topic is, if I read the item correctly. And I want to say that I really agree with everything Pierre Rivas brought up, what the general plan says, the exhaustive discussions that have been held prior. I think the reason this issue was pulled specifically, if we can keep on the topic, I think was City Council Member Yarbrough wanting to know why these couldn't be short-term rentals. And this isn't for the middle class to get richer. That's not what ADUs are about. Middle class own houses, middle class can build an ADU, or upper class. The concept, I think we have to remember about why there's the requirements for ADUs is to create more affordable housing. That is the reason why there's this streamlined process to get these plans through. I don't know, is it 60 days, 6 months, whatever it is. Let's get them going. You know, the same people who have concerns about the homeless. Yes, we have the navigation center, but that doesn't cover everybody. We need affordable housing if you want people not to be on the street. So I just hope that we can stay within the spirit of why this whole ADU state requirements are trying to help us move along. I hope we can keep that in mind and not have this be a money-making venture. That's not the point of ADUs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Hi there, Julie Robinson. Thank you very much. It was really great hearing the presentation, Mr. Rivas. And I have for a long time been passionate about people I know and people I work with who struggle to have a place to live, especially within their community. And so this is really good news. Although, I just want to put another idea out there. So I live on Conrad Court, and some time back, a house next to me was actually redlined. Is that the right word? No. It was condemned. And it had been a rental unit for some people. And I worry, though, that if there's no oversight over the ADUs, that we could have some kind of slumlord kind of situation where vulnerable people could be being taken advantage of. Of course, I'm very pro ADUs, but I do think some oversight might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Just a quick question that I should have known and should have read, but when the term short-term housing is used, I assume short-term, as previously described, means 30 days or less, like you have with Airbnb. And the reason I say that is because it's very hard to rent furnished housing. On the other hand, that's exactly what nurses needed during COVID, 3-6 months, and they're not going to be able to get housing if you precluded them from being able to do that. So that's the reason for the question.
Thank you, Kirk.
A general plan can be changed and adjusted. The way Agenda 7.5 Attachment 1 is written, it will put a complete stop on any future opportunities for the City of Placerville residents to be able to offer their ADUs or parts of their homes as short-term rentals. This is in direct contrast to the City Council's previous discussion for a citywide approach with prior community input on January 25th, 2022. Now in complete contrast, Agenda Item 7.5 Attachment 1 is proposing to amend and make changes to our current housing terms and zoning definitions. A definition that would require all ADUs to not be allowed to be rented as short-term rentals. The specific quote in the attachment is as follows. Item T, vacation or short-term rental. Vacation or short-term rentals are prohibited in all ADUs. ADUs shall not be rented for a period of less than 31 days. An important city council meeting that took place on June 28, 2022, a staff member made the statement that ADUs in the residential zones under state law cannot be rented as short-term rentals. That recording was documented in the meeting on YouTube on the Placerville IT. So this is on YouTube where you can reference this. Staff was corrected by the city attorney, who clarified that an ADU could be eligible and used as an STR and is up to the discretion of local municipalities. I did some further research on this specific issue, and I looked at some of the counties in our local area. Sacramento County actually has this very specific question stated: can I use my accessory dwelling unit, junior accessory dwelling unit, or guest house as a short-term rental? This was the answer. An ADU cannot be used for short-term rental actively unless it was a legally permitted ADU prior to January 1st, 2020. So even in our neighboring county, it is allowed as long as it was permitted prior to January 1st, 2020. What I ask for from City Council is to please not approve 7.5 Attachment 1 ordinance without making these updates and options available to our City of Placerville residents. Even the entire county we live in has a vacation home rental ordinance that is approved for the majority of its residents, excluding City of Placerville residents, because we fall under this smaller jurisdiction. So I ask that we create a more equitable option instead of creating a blanket option and completely eliminating this from our codes with the way this ordinance proposal is currently written. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larissa.
Kathy Lishman again. I didn't come tonight for this item. It was on the consent calendar, and I did not know it was going to be changed. So I am a little confused and not prepared to say what I really want to say. It's bad enough that the state is allowing ADUs anywhere and that we have to reduce the fees and the setbacks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We live in a city that has houses very close together. And we're not in the county, which people have acreage. Also, the county and Tahoe both have restrictive ordinances. We have none. The people that have illegal ADUs or short-term rentals in the city now know that they're illegal. And the city is getting no fees, and the situation in the county is totally different. And the situation at Tahoe is totally different. The purpose of the ADUs is to facilitate housing for permanent housing, not for profit Airbnbs. Our neighborhoods are small. What I can see, and I'm sorry, but I disagree with the fact that it shouldn't be an owner that lives on the property, because what I could see happening is people coming in and buying a house and building another house and then renting out both houses. It's going to be an impact on our community and on our homeowners when someone decides to build a house in their front yard and it was never there before, and the neighbors never knew that would happen. So I don't think this is for vacation rentals or Airbnbs, and I think we need to be thinking about the people that live here now and the people that have bought their houses knowing full well what their neighborhood was like, and then they're probably going to be changed drastically. So, and I don't think that we need to have amnesty, because I think a lot of the people that are doing it know that it's illegal. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville. I agree with Kathy. These were never meant to be Airbnbs or short-term rentals, or to bring money into the homeowner by letting them rent out these accessory dwelling units. They were always meant to be a way of giving people permanent housing so that you could live in Placerville and work in Placerville and not have to drive, which eats up your money by having to drive from where? Cameron Park, Sacramento, so you could work in Placerville. No, the whole idea was to deal with the housing shortage we have here. And the housing shortage we have here is permanent housing shortage, not Airbnb shortage. I have friends in South Lake Tahoe who have been totally impacted by the Airbnb junk that has gone on up there. And they are sorry that that ever got started. So I think what we're doing is what we have discussed. We've discussed this for months and months about ADUs, and it was always supposed to be not the Airbnb stuff. So I think that the citizens of Placerville have already spoken, and I think that what Pierre has presented here is what is needed to be done, and not to have these as short-term rentals. That was never the focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Do we have any other speakers? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to the council. Cleve, do you want to answer any of the questions that were asked?
Pierre, anything you want to answer there? I'm trying to think.
Thank you. I think it's important to differentiate between two different types of units we're looking at. What's before you is regulations of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. This ordinance does not affect or is not regulating the situation where a couple of the speakers spoke about would be a hosted meaning owner-occupied house where they want to rent out a room as a short-term rental. And I'll try and refresh the council's memory. We had a discussion about this probably maybe a little over a year ago, where when staff was reviewing the ordinance, we had an archaic section in all of the residential zone districts, and that said, under the uses permitted by right, one of those uses was the renting of a room. And that was when jurisdictions were attempting to regulate the number of people that could live in a house. And so later court decisions said that the local jurisdiction didn't have the ability to define a family. And so that was removed. And so later on, after a lot of discussion with staff and the council, we went ahead and moved forward with creating a short-term rental ordinance that would allow short-term rentals in the three commercial zones that I mentioned before, the commercial, central business district, and highway commercial. And that we would again look at coming back and allowing for short-term rentals in an owner-occupied home, because that particular type of short-term rental would not cause the impacts of shortchanging our ability to create affordable housing, which is what ADUs and junior ADUs are meant to do. So some of the speakers said that the short-term or the accessory dwelling units are for housing, and that is correct. And way back before we were looking at the ordinances, we did go through our comprehensive update of the housing element, and the housing element had that program F-7 that I read to you into the record, and what that was meant to do. It states specifically in there that staff would come back and look at a short-term rental as what I would consider to be the hosted short-term rentals. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that issue, because that's not what's before you. It's not on the agenda. That's a separate item. So there was one of the speakers that came before you that was basically stating that the city was taking enforcement action to shut down a short-term rental. That was a short-term rental in a bedroom, what we can determine to be a bedroom in the house. So that isn't regulated by this ordinance before you. That would be a violation of 10-4-20, short-term rentals, which specifies its own districts where that's allowed. It would also be a violation of 10-5-8. That's the R16 single-family residential zone, which lists the uses that are allowed by right or by conditional use permit or some other permitting ability, and short-term rentals are not in there. So those are two separate ordinances that person is in violation of, not the ordinance before you. So the ordinance before you is strictly to regulate short-term rentals. Another thing I want to clarify is one of the speakers said that staff erred in citing state regulation that said that we cannot allow ADUs to be short-term rentals, and that is correct. Staff, way back when, did make an error in our reading of the law. What the state is saying that is the purview of the local jurisdiction. So if it was the desire of the city council to allow accessory dwelling units to serve as a short-term rental, you can certainly do that. You can direct staff to make the appropriate changes. So again, that's more involved than just this ordinance. We would have to do a general plan amendment, change or eliminate program F-7, change it, and we would have to amend this code, and then we'd have to amend the other codes in each of the particular residential zone districts. So it's a lot of effort. We can certainly do that if that's a desire of the council, but staff will recommend at this time that you adopt this ordinance as proposed. It's consistent with the general plan, consistent with previous city council direction, and we certainly want to come back with another ordinance that would amend. It would probably be an amendment to 10-420, and that's the ordinance that currently regulates short-term rentals.
Thank you, Pierre. Before we start this conversation, it just seems like it's perhaps the appropriate time. Mayor Saragosa and I were going to propose for a future item that we put a moratorium on the short-term rentals for owner-occupied in the city of Placerville. I just want to put that out for the council to consider because it's not this item, but it all is kind of related and in terms of moving forward and the steps that we're going to move forward with. With that, John, I kept seeing you itch for your button.
Well,
so.
I know it's itching. Okay, I don't know about itching. Okay, so I guess my question for staff is, if we were to taking action on the item that's before us does not change the city's posture towards short-term rentals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because I think some things have gotten conflated that somehow this would change that posture, that it would make it different. But from what I'm hearing from you and what I read, it sounds like that's not the case, that is a discussion for a different day, which had been talked about by the council even before some of us were up here. That had been discussed. So I just want to get clarity on that, because I think that's maybe out there. If you get a letter from the city, and I don't necessarily speaking to the specific letter that was mentioned in the comments, but it doesn't. Are these things complaint driven, or somehow how does the city know?
We either know through complaints of an adjacent property owner or through other means.
Right. Okay.
But basically, staff does want to. I just want to clear up something, make sure everybody understands that up until the adoption of Ordinance 1710 on July of 2022, short-term rentals were not allowed in the city.
At all?
At all.
And then
So
they
were
did
illegal.
the thing with the central business district.
Yes, so when you talk about a moratorium, I know the city of South Lake Tahoe was looking at restricting short-term rentals, so they had moratoriums or different things where they were slowly constraining. In fact, there was a court case regarding the elimination of short-term rentals where they had occurred legally in the past.
Right.
That's not the situation we have here. Okay. So the short-term rentals now are permitted under certain zone districts under Ordinance 1710.
Right. Okay. Okay, so that's that. And then how many ADUs have actually been approved and built in the city?
I believe
Pick a
we-
time frame.
I believe we have 5 legal STRs in the city.
Not short-term rentals, no, ADUs.
Oh, ADUs.
Yeah, how
in the
many
city.
ADUs have been?
Do not know, and I was hoping to have that information at
Okay.
hand because I thought it would come up, but sorry. I
Okay,
don't
no, that's
have
okay.
information
I mean, is it a lot? Is it a little? Is it, I mean?
I think we have quite a few
Quite a
accessory
few.
dwelling
Okay,
units. Yeah,
quite a few.
and we're permitting quite a few each year.
Okay.
In fact, I think at a later item where we give our development services stats,
Okay.
I think we include that information in there. At least I hope we do.
Okay, and for full disclosure to the public, I have a business license with the city of Placerville. I operate my business out of my home. It is just me. I don't have clients. I just sit in front of a computer all day and have my arteries harden up on it. But, so I just want to disclose that. I actually run my business out of my home, but if you didn't know I was there, you wouldn't know I was running a business. So anyway, these used to be called granny flats, right?
That's correct.
When I was selling real estate 100 years ago, these were called granny flats, and they were literally for when your parents got too old and you had that idea that you might have to have them live with you, but somewhere else. Okay, I just was curious about that. Thank you.
David, Nicole?
So I agree that we should not have short-term vacation rentals in ADUs. I did vote no on this item during the first reading of the ordinance. The reason for that is that I have concerns around the language associated with requiring an off-site parking space on substandard streets, both in terms of subjectivity of what is a substandard street, who makes the decision of your street is substandard and you can't have an ADU unless you have off-site parking, whereas somebody else can, as well as sort of fairness around, use of public streets in general and who gets to park there and who doesn't. So I thought that issue could be addressed through no parking, which we do have a no parking ordinance if we truly think a street is unsafe. But I do not want to have a requirement for off-site parking for ADUs. I do not think that we should require that in our ordinance, and so that was the reason I have voted against this ordinance during the first reading.
Okay, David?
Sure, I'll jump in. Okay, I think some of the issue that we have is basically language and clarification. So I think that's where we're getting a lot of confusion between the ADUs and the short-term rentals and what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what this is actually going to stop or not stop. So I'm not really sure how to clear that up or how to make that language a little bit better. I obviously would like to see the short-term rental conversation come up a lot sooner than later at this point. We definitely need to be able to do that. I mean, one of the things, for those of you that don't know, I'm a mortgage officer. I work for a mortgage company. I deal with this kind of stuff on a daily basis when it comes to ADUs. One of the strategies in the real estate industry to help younger people get into homes, especially if they have an ADU, is they have the opportunity to rent that out to help them pay their mortgage so they can afford a house in California. Because right now, if you don't know this, if you are a single person, just to qualify to buy a home at $350,000 in this county, you have to make $125,000 a year. Most people don't make that, okay? That's to have the right credit score, the right debt to income ratio, and to be able to, the ability to repay the loan at that price. First off, try and find a $350,000 home in El Dorado County, okay? That's the hard part. So whether they're using a short-term rental for those ADUs or a long-term rental for those ADUs, it is an advantage to those younger people to be able to buy that more expensive home to be able to help support their mortgages. Don't get yourself wrong when it comes to the state issuing this thing for ADUs for affordable housing. Yes, that is their idea. Unfortunately, especially if you do not require primary owners to be living on the property for these ADUs to be rentals, you're going to get corporations buying these homes and turning them into rentals, front and back, and adding one if they want to. So not having that primary resident on there is not necessarily going to stop that extra home being built in that neighborhood that wasn't there before. It's happening all over the place, unfortunately. I get the concept of ADUs and affordable housing. The other part of affordable housing is you put a brand new ADU on a piece of property and it is 1,200 square feet. That ADU is going to rent for $1,500 to $2,000 a month. That is not necessarily affordable housing. Affordable housing is so somebody can actually purchase a home. So the ADU argument and the ADU strategy is a good one at heart, but unfortunately, there's too many loopholes that are going to make it as easy as the state wants you to think it's going to be for buying these homes or making affordable housing. The other part of it is also the cost of building it. Not a lot of people can afford to throw an ADU on their property so they can add a rental, because at that time, now you're paying the interest rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody kind of knows what it costs to build a house around here. So I would hopefully like to see this, maybe the language changed a little bit so it's a little more understandable. I'm not quite sure how to do that because I'm not a lawyer. At the same time, I would definitely like to see that short-term rental conversation at least come up very quickly, because we do have people in this community that are missing out with the opportunity to help support themselves, to pay that mortgage, to pay their bills, where if they live just outside of city limits, which isn't far, they can do that. So, because we have that availability within our county. So I'm kind of concerned that the city and the county aren't aligned with this. I understand the crowding, I understand all the negative possibilities, but at the same time, we have some positive possibilities for this opportunity also. So, I mean, I know it's a hornet's nest of a problem, but I think we just need to get a little bit clearer on this.
Do you have more comments, Nicole?
I was just going to say, we do have a bed and breakfast ordinance that if you live in a house that's more than 50 years old, you can get a bed and breakfast permit to rent out rooms in your home that you live in. So that is something that exists. I think we could look at, whether or not we want to remove the historic home component of that as a future agenda item. But there is a bed and breakfast ordinance as it stands that you can do bed and breakfast out of your home where you live. That's your primary residence.
Do you have any more, John?
I wanted to kind of noodle around with this road thing, because I asked if they had defined it, the substandard road, and apparently they haven't. And I was wondering how difficult that would be and what would be the standard. I mean, there are a healthy chunk of the roads in town are. Yeah, I mean, there's like, I mean, even where I live, there's not a lot. I mean, our road isn't bad, but like Country Club, when they laid out Country Club, I don't know, what they were thinking, but you park a car on one side, you don't have a road anymore. I mean, and that's, and you get into the old parts of town, it's just that much worse. So I'm just wondering how practical that is I mean, I don't hold any illusions about ADUs and STUs and all this other stuff. It's just money making. I mean, some people build an ADU for their grandparent, the granny flat or whatever, and they do that, and that's kind of what the concept is. I don't think it's going to make affordable housing because it's too darned expensive to actually build one of these things, and you're not in a place where that's even possible to build something that cheaply. But on the other hand, the STU thing too is, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's money. We just want to make some money, and that's fine. This is America. You should all make as much money as humanly possible. But it does impact neighborhoods. I've been to some places where I was visiting a friend of mine up in Oregon in a very nice coastal town that has they have this issue in spades. The house across the street, somebody was in there. It's one of those acronymal STU outfits. There were people sitting on the roof looking at the Pacific Ocean. I mean, and they were making noise all night. And, you know, we can talk about somebody trying to invest in all that other stuff, but it can get, well, and they found that out in Tahoe real fast. But I think we have two different issues here. And if we could resolve this road thing, then maybe we can get something that my council member might approve of. Is that your one issue, is the roads, or were there other things?
My one issue is the requirement
Right.
for off-site parking
Right.
on a substandard street.
Okay.
So if we remove that requirement and we did not require off-site parking if you lived on a substandard street, and we just said, you know, no parking requirement for off-site parking, I would be very much supportive of the ordinance as it stands.
Does that run us afoul of the state of California?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, if I could maybe
Yeah,
shed
and
some light on this
John wasn't
parking
here for the
issue.
last
I wasn't
conversation,
here. I
so
was
maybe
out
you
in-
could.
So
Enjoying myself.
essentially, the state regulations were limiting jurisdictions' ability to impose additional parking. So say, for example, you converted a on-site garage into an ADU, not only would we not be able to impose a parking stall for the newly established ADU, but we couldn't require parking for the loss of that parking space.
Mm-hmm.
So this issue came more in the light by the designation of the city being in a very high fire hazard severity zone. So there was Senate Bill 9 that was allowing by right property owner to subdivide their property, and essentially they could turn a property that maybe has a single family home in it and build and yield 4 units by right.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an exception in that law with respect to very high fire hazard severity zones. So that's what staff attempted to apply here, and that's in concert with consultation with the El Dorado County Fire Protection District, is that, you know, we had a particular case on a substandard road in the city. I won't name that road, but if you were to get additional parking on this substandard street, it would be very difficult for emergency vehicles to get through there. It was a dead-end road. If there was an emergency, they could have issue getting out. So the requirement is to require not off-site, but to if the street is substandard, then the city would impose just our standard number of parking stalls on-site. Because if you can't park safely, you know, off-site, then we want to just require that they provide for that extra additional parking stall on-site. That's what the code should read.
Okay.
Thank you, Pierre. And my understanding of it last time, when we were talking about street standards, I mean, we don't have uniform streets in the city of Placerville. No, that's just the reality of it. And coming up with a standard and looking at every street in the city of Placerville will take a great deal of time. And my understanding was this would just give staff time to evaluate those streets, evaluate the issues, and still move forward with the coming compliant with all the state regulations that's there.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, if staff could just direct the council's attention to item 12.4. That's where we actually have a discussion item regarding substandard streets and parking.
Yeah, and I think my contention is we do have that ordinance 9-3 that has streets as no parking. So that already addresses the fire safety hazard of people parking on substandard, dangerous streets, regardless of whether they live in an ADU or they live in a house.
Right. Right.
Any further comments, questions? All right, this is item 7.5. Do we have a motion?
Well,
I will make a motion to approve 7.5. That's where we'll start. And David, I heard what you said, that you wanted to change for clarification, but you weren't clear about what you, it didn't sound like you wanted to change the ordinance, you just wanted it to be more clear.
Sorry, this is yeah. Sorry, yeah. This is the part where I'm kind of perplexed on just making sure that it's clear enough to not just us, but, you know, to the people that live in the city, that this is more about the roads and the building of the ADUs and what the state is going to allow, you know, on your property, not necessarily what you can and can't do with it. Because I don't
for
think
a different introduction.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah,
exactly you're
yeah.
looking for.
I know. I just think that there's just a lot of concern that the minute this goes through, that certain people that you know, have ADUs are no longer going to be able to do what they're currently doing with them. So I'm not really sure that how to go about
long-term rentals more than 30
Yeah.
days are allowed in
Right.
ADUs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah, and we currently do not allow short-term rentals in ADUs under our ordinances as they stand today. So if you're doing that, you're already doing something illegal in the city.
And that's kind of that's kind of why I asked the question I asked.
Yeah.
Is if this thing gets passed, it doesn't change the position of the city through its general plan about the issue of short-term rentals. This will not do that. It does have this road thing in there.
Yeah.
That
we need to get.
You know, I mean, you know, you might just own a piece of. I mean, you might own a piece of property somewhere in town that you can't build an ADU on. You know, I mean,
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. No, I understand the
yeah.
parts with the ADUs. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to have the setbacks. You got to have the building.
Yeah,
You know, you
yeah.
got to have the space for it anyway. So I mean, if you can't build it, you can't build it.
I mean, I'm not familiar with every street and house in this town, but I used to live in a place that had pretty small lots, and most of the road I lived on was pretty narrow, and I think that's kind of what most of this town is like. You get into the older parts of town where they're Darlington and places like that with the small lots.
Yeah, I live on one.
Yeah, those streets are narrow.
You put one car on one side, and you're not getting another
like
car
I
down the
said,
other.
you know, so
Yeah.
some of this is just the nature of the community we live in. The fact that it was, you know, when I use quotation fingers to say it was laid out, 100 and something years ago for the most part. So anyway, my personal feeling is that I don't think passing this ordinance changes the issue that some of the folks came here and talked about, which is a really important issue, and we really need to run it to ground. And we should try to get staff to do that as soon as humanly possible.
Okay.
My personal feeling is this doesn't change that. That's, you know. So.
Could I make one
Please do,
point?
Cleve.
Maybe to help a little bit with what David is saying. If we leave this as is, it currently says that, you know, it does not allow ADU to be used for a short-term rental. As Councilmember Carici mentioned, currently they can't do that anyway in a residential zone. We will bring back to you, and depending on how you want us to prioritize, and we'll look for some direction from you on how we do that and when we do that. That does not say that when we bring that back, you could decide at that time, we change based on basic, information we received in between, and say, we've changed now. We want to allow an ADU to be used for a short-term rental. That could be done at that time. This doesn't preclude that from happening. It would require a change to this, again, at that time, but it could be done as part of the whole process at that time. This does not cement that you couldn't come back when you look at a residential short-term rental ordinance to say that we now have decided we want to allow that, despite it saying in here now we would have to come back and change this language, but that could be done.
Right, we'd have more time to think about that because you're changing the general plan, the housing element, all of those things. I'm not ready to do that on a dime tonight, but we will have an opportunity to consider that in the future with the future residential short-term rental discussion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion that was made.
Any more discussion?
Did you want to change any language when it comes to the parking?
I mean, I think I've made my position clear, but that's not where we stand, and that wasn't on the first ordinance either, so that's fine. I mean, my desire is to not require off-site parking for ADUs.
And I think there might be those exceptions, and I want to leave staff that flexibility as we move forward into these new things, that we can look at those, streets. I have confidence that our staff will be fair, driven by a public safety point of view. So I'm going to leave my motion as stands.
Well, yes, since they used the very precise term substandard road, they've left it sort of open to interpretation, it would seem like, to me.
Well, they're going to have to define it and tighten
Yeah,
it down as they
right,
move forward and look
right.
at those things.
That's true.
certainly.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that will set precedents and.
Yeah. Yes, yes, it will.
And that in of itself is my primary concern, is fairness and different people being treated differently, and what's substandard and not, and who decides what's substandard, and, you know, it's very subjective. So that at its core is its problem, is sort of a fairness issue in my mind.
Anything else? Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
No.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Nay.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Motion fails.
That motion fails.
So the
and,
motion fails.
and that means that we'll have to be brought back, reworded, because we still have to solve the.
I mean, is there any direction from council? what
Coming
you
into
would like us
compliance
to
with
do?
that.
I think we need to put some meat on the bones of substandard parking.
Yes.
And take that and or either eliminate it or just define it so that we understand it.
Yeah, either a better definition
Yeah.
or an elimination.
That seems to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Staff feel like they have sufficient direction?
Well, we can remove it. Are you open to
I'll-
considering that? Can
I'll make a
removing that
motion
language?
of that effect.
Well,
if people want to.
we can't do that tonight.
Okay.
It'll require us to reintroduce the ordinance if we make that change. But if that's the direction to bring it back, considering removing that language.
Personally, I would like to see definition of
Yeah.
substandard. I don't want to see it just completely removed. We have those streets that we need to look at. We do need to look at public safety. So if we need to define what substandard is, I'd like to see it come back with a better definition of substandard.
Okay, so looking at the two that voted no on this, would that be acceptable to you? Because I didn't hear that from you, Councilmember Gottberg, necessarily.
It's not acceptable to me. I do not know about Councilmember Yarbrough. My issue is I don't want to require, parking off the street. And I think if it's unsafe, it should be no parking, and it should be no parking for everyone. And you have to find another place to park and walk to your house, whether you have parking at your house or not. And if you've got roommates in your house and you have 10 people living in your house, which you can, you shouldn't be treated differently than somebody who's got an ADU and has, somebody living in an ADU in a separate unit on their property with that many people on the property.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreement with
agree with
Nicole on that one. Yeah.
And you have another council member who's not here, so.
Right. Yeah, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Well, we will bring it back at introduction, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney. We can make those adjustments at the meeting with introduction. So we can bring it back with some options to you, and you can make that determination of how we introduce it at that time, probably at your next meeting. So, acceptable?
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Okay, we will move on to item 10, ordinances, which we don't have any. 11, public hearings, we don't have any. And that brings us to 12.1. Consider sending a letter to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, State Department and General Services, and Jamboree Housing Corporation regarding parking concerns at the proposed Clementine apartment project at the Placerville Armory site. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I may tag team a little bit this with our Development Services Director, Pierre. We put this report together, both of us together. So what we're asking tonight, we have had concerns. We've worked close with the developer on this project. However, we have had concerns that their parking strategy is not what we would like to see. There are certain guidelines that are set up by the state for these affordable housing projects, and I need to note that this is a state project. It is state property. It is not ours. However, they have allowed us to comment. We've reviewed the site plan at Planning Commission level, I believe. Is that correct, Pierre? He's not. Did we? Planning Commission has reviewed this, right? The site plan for Clementine.
the planning commission and the city council has
Right.
the opportunity to review the site plan.
Right.
The Jamboree, the project proponent, has made presentations to both bodies several times.
So the point is, they've been cooperative and they want it to be part of the city. However, as noted in the report, their current proposed parking is 81 stalls, and I believe there's 80 units, correct, Pierre, total? 81 units? Thanks, Ruth. So with that, that means only one vehicle per unit. It's designed, and we recognize that we have public transit that hopefully people can use. But based on our experience for these affordable housing projects, we see that generally that is not enough parking. And you see the chart in the report. Under our zoning code, we would be requiring 125 stalls for the complex. If they were eligible under the state for a density bonus, they would be eligible for, could do 108, and they're proposing 81. So we would just like to have the mayor sign this letter sending our concerns that we feel they need to have more parking in order to avoid overflow parking that would go onto Ray Lawyer Drive and potentially onto, although we think we'll be able to prohibit that, any parking on Armory because it's fairly narrow. Although there will be improvements done to that as part of the project. So this is our request that you consider authorizing the mayor to send this letter to the state organizations we noted here and the developer, Jamboree Housing, to encourage them to reconsider and look at ways to establish additional parking on the site.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any questions from the council? No? Okay, we'll open this up for public comment.
Thanks, Ruth. Is it on? Is it on? Okay, Ruth Michelson. My concern was the topography, and can you go from 81 to 108? That's what, 27 more spaces? I mean, it seems like a reasonable request. You don't want cars willy-nilly all over the place and being a nuisance, right? You don't want to set up a nuisance. But is it a deal killer? Asking for 108, is there adequate land? I didn't see any, I'm not familiar. It's, it's with their layout. Is there space for 81? Is it a reasonable request? And if it's reasonable, it's just something, an additional cost for the developer, well then, yeah, they should do it. But if there's simply not the space, then I would hate to see this project go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Judging from this picture.
I just want to thank the city of Placerville for making an attempt to have the conversation that, there's really not ample parking. It's such a huge hill. It's going to be affordable housing. A lot of those units are going to be earmarked for seniors. How are they going to prioritize that parking? So I just want to say that, under the forced annexing of that state-owned property into affordable housing, how are they going to work with the city? I'm in full support of writing the letter.
Thank you, Ruth. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Further discussion?
Yeah, so going forward with this, I mean, is there a possibility with the letter for, them to reduce the size to try and make everything fit? Or are they there's just nothing up there? Because I know they're not doing too much road improvement up through there to even consider it, because I know they're trying to pretty much just force this through.
There, and Pierre, you can jump in here if you'd like, but I know that we met with them, the mayor and I, and Councilmember, no, you weren't, I was trying to remember who was there. Pierre and I and Mayor Zaragoza met with them probably at least 2 months ago and encouraged them, expressed our concerns about parking, and encouraged them to look at it. And they agreed to do that. However, we haven't heard from them in that. As you know, you may recall, there is a sliver of land between Ray Lawyer Drive and the project that is owned by the county. It's in the process of, and it may have already been done, I'm not sure where it's at, being transferred to the project, which we hope would allow for additional. It's needed for the project anyway because it creates a second exit, entrance, egress to the property onto Ray Lawyer Drive. But hopefully that will add additional space where additional parking could be added also. So,
okay.
I think if you look at the site map, if it's even remotely close to scale, if they were to get that piece of dirt, then yeah, you could almost certainly get the 28, whatever the number was, extra spaces there between the apartments and Ray Lawyer Drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's happening, then they should be able to do it. Send the letter. Let us send a letter. I will move a letter. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I also agree that I think there is a potential space there, so we're not asking for something unreasonable based on the plans and the topography and the location. And I also think, 108 is what kind of the state requirement would be, so I think it's, we should ask the state to follow their own regulations. I think that's reasonable on our part to do so.
Agreed.
Just a quick mention, and Pierre can speak to this better than I can, but technically they don't even qualify for the density bonus. So the 108 is not really even, they're not even within that. Is that correct, Pierre?
Yes, and I'll go ahead. I had an outline sort of written out. So basically, the Clementine Affordable Housing Project they're constructing 83 affordable units, 34 are one-bedroom, 27 are two-bedroom units, and 22 are three-bedroom units. So there is a section in the government code that would apply to a density bonus project. This project qualifies as a density bonus project because it's 100% affordable. So the ratios that the state provides are 0 to 1 bedrooms are required to provide 1 parking space, 2 to 3 bedrooms, 1.5 parking spaces, and 4+ bedrooms, 2.5. So when you look in your staff report, you see the table there. If we were to apply our parking standards in the city code, is 125 parking stalls. When we apply the density bonus parking ratios allowed, and that's the maximum parking that the city would be, if it were a city project, say, for example, if it was a private developer, we could require up to 108 because the density bonus provisions limit our numbers we can apply. So you go from 125 to 108. They're proposing 81. It's my understanding that 81 does include the additional parking that would be achieved by the acquisition of that sliver of property between the project site and Ray Lawyer Drive that's currently owned by the county. I want to add that it's my understanding that there were some representatives from Jamboree that were to be here tonight. I don't know if they're in the audience or not. I can't see them.
Yes,
okay, and they were going to speak to this item. But anyway, so in a nutshell, that's where the parking discrepancy is. They're, in accordance with the city code and in accordance with the density bonus provisions under state law, they're underparked by 27 parking stalls.
Well, really, they're under by 44 parking stalls, aren't they? Since we just said they don't qualify for the density bonus.
I think I was wrong on that. They do qualify for the density bonus. Is that correct, Pierre?
It's 44 less than what the city code would require, 27 stalls less than the density bonus provisions.
Do they qualify for the density bonus provision?
They don't. What they don't qualify is for a further reduction from the density bonus provisions.
Okay.
If they were one of those, and I can define, a reduction in parking can be waived, and so If any of the following are true for the project, the development is located within a half mile of a major transit stop. It is not. The development is for rent housing for individuals who are 55 years of age or older. It's not. The development is either a special needs housing development as defined in a certain section of the Health and Safety Code, and it doesn't apply for that either. So really, if this were a private developer coming in and not a state-owned property, the city would require a maximum of 108 stalls. But the applicant has other ideas. We have been working closely with them, as Mr. Morris stated, trying to come up with some solutions. They have the ability to submit a traffic and parking study to show that maybe the number of stalls they're proposing is adequate, but I'll leave that to the Jamboree reps to discuss with you.
Thank you, Pierre. Did you have a question, John?
Well, yeah, sure. I noticed Pierre, did you say that the 81 stalls includes this sliver of land? Because now granted, this isn't gospel here in front of me, but I'm just looking at this picture, and I actually counted them, and there appear to be 81 parking spaces in this overview of the layout, not including.
Not including. Okay, my understanding it did, and so hopefully we
maybe
get some
that gentleman can answer
clarification
that
on
question.
that, because I know we were looking at one of the access road is quite wide that comes off of Armory Drive, and we're hoping to get some extra parking spaces there, but I thought they included that sliver as part of the project in the site plan.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Do we have someone who has answers?
Hi. Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Massey. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Jamboree. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you this evening. I did not come here to talk. Generally, we came here to listen. That's part of what we do. Jamboree, just for everyone's knowledge, is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We've been doing this for about 34 years. We have developed and own more than 10,000 units, affordable units throughout the state of California. We've built in a lot of different communities. And the reason that we've been successful and been able to grow and produce housing at that kind of levels is because we tend to work very closely with our partners, and we always see the cities where we're developing as partners. Now that's regardless of the land entitlement process that we're working on, or whatever other means we're using to move to feasibility. It's important for us. It's important for our residents ultimately that we fit within the community, and that's something that we strive for. And throughout the pre-development process, we really enjoy working with other community members. This is your community. We're coming in. We intend to be here for a very long time. Jamboree is a long-term holder. We very rarely sell anything. Our goal is to continue to provide affordable housing and the services that go with them for a long, long time. For us to be successful, for our residents to be successful, this has to fit into your community, it has to be a part of it. So we are here to listen. We have gone through this development process. We have refined this development a number of times. We can continue to do so. We are in the midst of taking a hard look at the parking requirements and the parking that we've designed currently. What we found in a number of communities is that the rate of ownership for cars for families that are low income is significantly lower than the rest of the population. Now, is that true in every community? It is not. Is it true in a lot of communities? It is. So we wanted to dial in and make sure we have an understanding of the data, and we will be happy to share that with the city as we get that information and analyze it. In addition to that, we recognize that because we are going to be here for 55 years or more, the community will change over that time, and we have to be able to adapt to that. And it may be so that the demand for parking is not
is sufficient at one space per unit. That may change in the future. Part of what we will do on every project is we'll have a parking mitigation plan. So we're not going into this blindly. If there are issues associated with parking, we and our property managers address it on a proactive basis. We will have a plan in effect in order to address any changes and any issues that we have. But all of that is to say, like I said, we are here to listen this evening. I think that our staff has been really responsive to the city, to the county, to the other stakeholders in the community. As I mentioned, we've now tweaked this design. We did one sort of overall design. We've done some tweaking along the ways. We're continuing to tweak. So in regards to this sliver of additional land, the primary purpose in that is to look at access to the site and not to address parking, but we think there may be an opportunity to add some additional parking spaces there. But we are taking an overall look at the parking and want to continue to listen. And as I said, we'll share whatever information we have along the way.
Thank you. We haven't opened this to public comment yet, have we?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
I think you
Yes. Good. Yeah, excellent.
The two Ruths.
Two Ruths, okay, great. Do we have any further comments, questions? John?
I think, please try to make more parking, please.
I think if you go look at the Woodridge apartments,
Yeah,
and some of
boy.
the apartments we have around town, you'll find that there is a larger need for parking in our rural area.
Yeah.
Even though we're a city, it's hard to get far.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I wish this didn't have a hum. Okay. 20 to 7. Should we, do we need a
I moved the letter.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
Roll call?
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Thank you.
Are we okay to keep going, or one more item? All right, one more item. Okay. 12.2. Consider acknowledging and filing the American Rescue Plan Act Fund Budget Status Report approving $71,200 budget liquidation from ARPA funds for a contribution to El Dorado County for the Homeless Navigation Center, approving a $15,000 budget appropriation from ARPA to fund the Arts and Culture El Dorado Public Art Master Plan, and approving a $56,200 budget appropriation from ARPA Fund for a contribution to Heritage Association of El Dorado County to update the city's inventory of historic resources. Mr. Warren.
Good evening, Vice Mayor No and members of the council. So this is kind of a follow-up to your budget deliberations last spring. You may recall on March 11th, 2021, the President signed the American Rescue Plan Act to assist the state, local, and tribal governments in recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. The city has received a total of $2,673,298 in ARPA funds. The ARPA funds must be encumbered by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. The entire $2.6 million in ARPA funds have been either budgeted or identified for a specific project. The ARPA fund budget analysis that is included in your agenda packet summarizes the $2.1 million that has been budgeted thus far. Of that amount, $1.2 million has been encumbered or committed. Of that $2.1 million, $462,000 could be liquidated or reappropriated for other programs or projects. The $462,000 amount includes total remaining balances for the fuel reduction treatment for all city properties, the Lions Park Large Shelter, a contribution to El Dorado County for a homeless navigation center that was previously proposed on Perks Court. There remains also a $500,000 set aside for the Corporation Yard revitalization project, which we ask that you keep intact until that project starts. During your budget deliberations last spring, the council received a written funding request from Arts and Culture El Dorado for the Public Arts Master Plan and a verbal funding request from Heritage Association of El Dorado County for an update of the city's inventory of historic resources. At that time, the City Council requested a budget update, which we're providing tonight, and potential funding opportunities for both funding requests. Since that time, staff has received a written funding request from the Heritage Association, which is in your packet. At your budget workshop held on May 10th of this year, staff and Terry Lamonchek, Executive Director of Arts and Culture El Dorado, presented the proposed funding request for the Public Art Master Plan, which is included in your agenda packet as well. The preparation of the Public Art Master Plan would establish decision-making guidelines for facilitating public art proposals, including the acquisition, installation, and funding of public art in parks, at parks and other public spaces. The total cost of the funding, the consultant services for Art Builds Community San Jose is $60,000. Arts and Culture is funding $45,000 of that total cost, and the remaining $15,000 they're requesting from the city. The consultant will prepare a public arts master plan under the contract with Arts and Culture to include the engagement of city staff and development of the plan. For example, Arts and Culture held a community meeting in this building on July 31st. The $15,000 funding request for public art master plan could potentially come from the ARPA funds that are available to be liquidated. And then during your budget deliberations this past spring, Kirk Smith, president of the Heritage Association, presented a verbal funding request for an update of the city's inventory of historic resources. Since that time, Mr. Smith has submitted a written proposal, which is included in your agenda packet. And looking back during 1984-1985, a survey inventory of existing historic resources within the city was prepared under the direction of Lavelde House, a city-hired consultant, and a community volunteer. This work was funded by a grant administered by the California Department of Parks and Recreation, a federal grant funded under the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, along with matching funds from the city. The Heritage Association has requested $56,200 to update the city's inventory of historic resources and promote the rich history of Placerville through outreach. The proposed project includes hiring of a consultant who is experienced in preparing historical resources, surveys, a graduate student to help assist the consultant and expedite the project, and a part-time administrative assistant who would perform general clerical services. The proposed outreach would include the creation of a Facebook page that will inform the public about the work being done as the project progresses. The project would make more standardized signs that describe the historic details of the buildings included in the inventory. A paperback version, a book of the inventory is also proposed, whereby the sales of the books would help pay for the publication. The $56,200 funding request by the group potentially could come from the unencumbered fund balance from the ARPA fund. So if the city council decided to approve the $15,000 contribution to Arts and Culture and the $56,200 contribution to the Heritage Association, which totals $71,200, staff would recommend that you liquidate $71,200 from the contribution to El Dorado County for the Homeless Navigation Center, which, again, that was another proposal that didn't come to fruition. They're on Perks Court. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Do you have comments that you'd like the public to consider?
I guess I can say in that front of comments that the public consider would be, prioritization of what we want to do with the remaining ARPA funds that we have that we could liquidate. And that, we previously talked about the $15,000 for the public art master plan during our budgeting workshops. And I don't think that amount of money being liquidated would be sort of a make or break on doing other things that we may want to do, like a broadband conduit on Broadway. But when we start talking about $71,000 with 462 left, that's a much larger dollar amount that could sort of impact what else we could do. And so I guess I sort of want a more holistic discussion of how we're going to prioritize all of the money we have remaining versus sort of one-off items that we're approving.
Thank you, Nicole. David, John? I'm just going to piggyback off that a little bit. I had some similar concerns with that. With the art project, the Arts Council is bringing a matching $15,000. They're bringing us a grant $30,000. It really makes sense for us to move forward. I think tonight with that item, we've discussed it at length. When we're talking about the other item, we're going to have a meeting at the end of August where we're going to talk about the historic districts, and we're going to have a whole workshop. And so in terms of prioritization, I'd like to have that workshop before we decide where we're going to prioritize our next historic move. You know, will it be focused on districts? Will it be focused on the inventory? I'm not particularly sure how we want to move about with that. And because we're not talking about any matching funds or deadlines with this, I really don't think we need to make this decision tonight regarding this item. And some other issues I have, you know, I tried to find some information on the Heritage Association of El Dorado County because to my information, to my knowledge, in the last 40 years, I understand 84, 85, there was some partnership, but we haven't had pretty much any partnership with them. So I went online, I tried to find any information about them. I can't find an annual report, or projects, or partnerships, anything like that. When I went on the state, I found their delinquent notice that they'd been delinquent for more than 10 years. And so as I'm trying to be responsible with the public's money, I think we need to take a much harder look at this. And maybe we still want to move forward with this, but maybe we want to look at who's going to be the project manager for this. And also, there used to be grants for these sort of things. I would like us to see what grants are available to apply for grants and make the best use of our money. With that said, we will open this to public comment.
Vice Mayor, can I just mention, you may want to ask the two proponents of these projects to speak first and then have the public speak. I know both of them are here.
Okay.
We would welcome their if they would like to. I'm not going to force you to, but if anyone would like to speak on the two proposed projects, we'd be happy to hear from them.
Can I just add something before they speak? I have an interest in the heritage. I don't. That thing you found, notwithstanding, I do have an interest in the Heritage Association being able to continue their work. And I've chatted with Kirk about this a couple of times, and I believe he did come, I think, at a budget hearing, might have come to a budget hearing and talked about it. I was a little surprised by the amount of money. In my mind, I had it in a slightly smaller amount. So maybe if Kirk would like to kind of just talk about that. I mean, once again, you don't have to. Because I'm sort of the mind to help them out. But although I agree, if we're going to do this thing at the end of whatever month, we may want to just kind of hold off and then use it as a package of things. Because we may find they deserve more, not less, or anything. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because we had talked about it. I just had this notion that it might be a smaller amount of money.
Okay. Would either Arts and Culture El Dorado, would you like to make any comments first?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for considering this request. When Mr. Warren was mentioning the item, he referred to it as Arts and Culture El Dorado's Public Art Master Plan. However, it really will be the community's plan. We've emphasized from the beginning that this is a community-driven process. The objective is that the City Council will ultimately adopt the plan. We did have that public meeting on July 31st. A number of you were there. City staff leadership was there, and council members were there. We were very gratified to see how many people showed up. It was a lively discussion. There was a lot of passion and interest and debate. We have a top consultant in the field of public art working on the plan, and the whole process will be transparent and, again, just to reemphasize, community-driven. This will be the community's plan. So I can answer any questions while I'm here. I think you've heard me present it on other occasions, so thank you for the opportunity.
Do we have any questions? No? Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Okay. Kirk, would you like to speak?
I appreciate all of your comments, and I agree with them. So some of the things I've already answered in the past. The Heritage Association had members on the board of directors who've been around for decades. Nobody was under the age of 65. And so ennui sets in. They didn't meet during COVID for those kind of reasons. And so after an element of burnout, they wanted to dissolve and send the money to the Historical Society, and a number of us didn't want to. So it was revitalized, and that's why we approached you before late. We have a treasurer who's working on the taxes and to revise the status. What you said was a surprise to me because I understood that the registration had been updated. As far as the costs, I was raised by very frugal people. I don't like to spend a lot of money. We will not spend what we don't need. Here's what we did. To start off with, we thought we could save a lot of money if we got a graduate student. At Sac State, they actually have a professor whose job is kind of like a matchmaker, connecting a student, a graduate student, with a thesis. Great. But then the California Preservation Alliance advised against that. And the reason is you need the expertise of consultants. So we got a list of about 6 and have talked with them, all of whom said they like the idea of working with a graduate student. But the reason is this. When I've described before that we looked at nearly 200 of these reports, and they all had a similar format, and they all seem to follow the same form, it turns out they do. There's a specific form they use, all of them. And when it comes to describing the style of a house, the architectural style, you can't get away with just saying, oh, well, that's Victorian and that's gingerbread. No, there's a set of classifications that describe those things in detail, and those are to be included. So if we started to do it on our own, it would be a really steep learning curve. So our intention is to use the services of the consultant at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, it's to give us marching orders, to outline the specific steps to look at. We have one person already assigned to going through the nearly 89 names, properties so far, and look for what is deficient, what needs to be corrected, because that was the case when it was first done. As far as the importance of the document, you use it all the time, at least the Planning Commission does, and it comes up before you periodically. Those of you who've served on the Planning Commission know its value for purpose of planning. But in addition, remember that all of you were excited about the Miners on Main project. What we're doing, plans for achieving the same 3 basic goals. One is to heighten interest in the heritage of this town. And the other is to promote education, preservation about the historic features by providing those properties. So the idea of the Facebook page, all of the consultants we talked to said that's very innovative and very helpful. One, it sparks interest. And then people can contribute information about specific properties. And that means you don't have to send it out by mail or knock on doors. You do it that way. To get a gauge of interest in the public, you've got a Facebook page called If You Grew Up in Placerville, et cetera, and that has thousands of subscribers. You put up a post and there'll be hundreds of comments. So that gives you an indication of the potential. The reason you don't see a website from us is because we've been holding off from doing that because we'd rather right now have a Facebook page that was devoted to this project and focus on that rather than one that promotes yourself. The other is to realize that even though we've listed all these people, it's going to be directed locally. We have a coalition with the other two, as Jacob will describe for you, the other two organizations. So we have space in the old post office to work. There are historians there I've known for years. I go to the research room of the museum once a month, and there they'd be. And that's what they've been working on ever since they got Marilyn Ferguson's papers. So the volunteers would do the bulk of the work. We want a product that's quality. And in looking at all the inventories we've seen, ours is towards the bottom in terms of being kind of sketchy. We've got good wordsmiths, so we'll make sure that the language is narratives, it tells stories, so it's not just going to have this academic feel about it. So the idea of the, when you have miners on Main, you've got a metal plaque. Well, this is going to be different because it's just simply a decal or overlay that goes on an existing sign or printed on the new sign. And it becomes an adventure to start to discover these new things. What's on the QR code is not going to be a duplication of what's on the sign. So for example, how many of you know that this building, what you're in now, was a Purity grocery store? And at the time it was existence, there were 10 grocery stores on Main Street. Or that 444 Main Street, that's Old Town Grill, was Garber's grocery store in 1852. Or that down at 115 Main Street was Tom Rayleigh's first grocery store, which radically, the drive-in market, which radically changed the way markets operated. You drive into the market, get your card out and put in it what you want, because people like Mary Meter will remember when she was a kid, she just called Kelly's grocery store on Main Street and they deliver. Isn't it interesting that all these little grocery stores that were all over had groceries, produce that was fresh, local, and organic? Well, of course, because there was no refrigeration and transportation was a problem. So now we've gone full circle and those big chains are advertising, they'll shop for you and they'll deliver. Great, we used to do it here. So that's the kind of information that's available. It becomes an adventure to start to learn these things by going around to each sign, each barcode. Those two aspects are at the very end. The immediate work is to get your product, your inventory done in the best possible fashion. And it's actually separate from the conference later in the month. I don't mind if you wait, you want to look at it some more, great. But you're not going to give a big paycheck to any group. It's going to be monitored as you go along. Dave will see it. You'll get progress reports as we go along. Again, I don't mind if you want to wait, but I hope I've answered the kind of questions that you've raised, unless you've got some more.
Yep. Mostly you have, Kirk, but I'm wondering about the grants that are available for some sort of thing.
Excellent question, because way back when this was done in 1984, it had a matching grant. The city came up with $5,000, and they got a matching grant for another $5,000. Well, the problem is, as Per can explain, there's a particular association that for all these other groups, it provides grants, matching grants. But the problem is the community has to be a certified, qualified community. Pierre can explain it to you. It's complicated. What he just explained is it's strict, and we don't have that status, so we can't get that money. But what the graduate student can do could be spend time looking for those other grants. After all, if you're a graduate student, what a great marketable skill to acquire, which is looking for grant money. But that's why we haven't asked for it. And if you take the money that was spent in 1984, adjust it for inflation, it equals about $32,000 in today's money. So that's why it's not maybe so out of the park. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of that, Kirk. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I would suggest that I'm of the mind to wait to this thing that happens the end of September, the end of August. It's not that far. And then I would also suggest, and I'll be happy to work with you on this. If you look at what arts and culture, I'm going to have a hard, even though they changed it like years ago, I still want to say the other one. Arts and culture. They put together a very nice little package here that is kind of what you're used to getting if you're either trying to ask for money or give money to people, where it actually has it has a nice layout. It tells you what the request is about. You have the building blocks of that in your request, but then it also has like the tasks, deliverables. It's kind of what folks are used to, and then that way, I think it'll organize your thoughts, and then also it's kind of in a form that a granting entity would be familiar with, and would be you're just a little easier to sort of deal with. So maybe you and I can get together and chat about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to walk you through that setup. And
it is an important subject. You spent 38 years saying you were going to update it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Anyway, I would have a suggestion, and I'd be happy to meet with you and help you.
Since you guys are going to do that, I also would like to see the proposal from the consultant, so I can see the consultant's scope of work.
That's kind of in here. That's in the thing that the arts and culture had in there. They sort of knitted what the consultant. I'm assuming that's the consultant's actual application. So they knitted all that together, and that became this thing that we have in our agenda package, which is tidy anyway. But you and I, we can talk about that.
Okay. Is there any further comment on this item? Public comment. What did I say?
Yeah, you're calling.
I'm calling for public comment.
Good evening again, Kathy Lishman. The thought of developing a public art plan for Placerville is pretty exciting. Community Pride volunteers have created 3 murals with approval from the city, but to have a plan for the community created by the community and to think about the possibilities, which are endless, and will contribute to the grace and charm of Placerville, which is Community Pride's motto. I was happy and excited to see the turnout the other night. I thought the presentation was excellent. The answers to the questions were very helpful. And it was very nice to see everybody in the audience given 4 sticky notes if they wanted to each answer one of the 4 questions and stick them up on the wall so that there's not discussion or a few people get to talk, but most of the people are just quiet. It was a very wonderful presentation and a lovely evening and a great turnout. So since 75% of this plan, the consultant's work is coming from the arts and culture, I think it's very appropriate for the city to contribute the $15,000. I will leave you with a quote from Pablo Picasso. Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. And it's not just, the plan is not just for art, it's for the arts, but the arts are very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Ruth Michelson. So in reading the item, so you're liquidating 71,000. That was your contribution to the El Dorado County Homeless Navigation Center. Just clarify that when we're done. So I wanted to give my support to what the arts and culture is doing, just what Kathy had said, great meeting, lots of participation, more than 50 people here. Many of you were here. I just want to remind you all that we also have Third Saturday Art Walk. And myself and Elena Tucker, who has the gallery next to me, she has Art Studio 360. We've done this every month for more than 2 years. And we put some of our own money into this. At one time, we got $100 out of each of the 7 galleries to put into a kitty, but that's been long since spent. on creating a map that the Mountain Democrat helped put together. Anyway, little plug for Third Saturday Art Walk. Terry, little plug. We should be in there too. So in my moments remaining, I really like Kirk's idea to carry this forward, the doing the inventory. I actually have a copy of what was done in the early 80s. I know what they did thus far, and I want to just repeat and reinforce what John Clarici said about this proposal. I think needs to be a little bit more formalized. Who is on the team? I mean, look back in my lifetime as an engineer, when we put together a proposal to do work, we were very specific who the team members were and what their qualifications were. So Heritage Association, yeah, what's that about? Who are those people? And also I agree that with the I have the proposal right here, that on the last page, it's pretty generic about dividing the money, and I think it should be done, you know, the 32,000, the 13,000, et cetera, that's on the Heritage, the proposal by the Heritage Society. It should be more developed. And I guess the other issue is, you know, sole source. Do you guys, when do you put things like this out to bid? Or when do you just say, yeah, we talked to Kirk, and I think it's great that Kirk brought this up. It's long since needs to be done, but it's just a procedural issue. If I came to you and asked you for $56,000 for something like Third Saturday Art Walk, would you consider it? I just don't understand the process. And at what point do you need to put things out to bid and get proposals from more than one person? Thanks.
Thank you, Ruth.
Hi, Maureen Dion Perry again, Housing El Dorado. I was wondering about the $71,000 budget liquidation for the that was the city's contribution to the County Homeless Navigation Center, and I was wondering why that could not just be transferred to the current navigation center, since it was allocated for a navigation center at Perks Court, which was changed to now the old juvenile hall. So I was just wanting to check in with you on that funding potentially to be transferred over instead of eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Sue Rodman, a resident of Placerville, and I think that arts and culture have done their homework, and that I attended the meeting that they had on July 31st, and I thought it was very well thought out, and I think that they definitely have done their share to raise most of the money, and $15,000 from the city does not seem like a horrible ask to me. I think for the heritage, it would be, I agree with you that it would be better to wait until August and have the gathering that you're talking about then. And I think, Clarici, your offer to help is a great one. So I would say, yes, that's wonderful. Do it. And then we can have a further discussion about the, because we still have a couple of years. We don't have to do this in the next 5 minutes. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Brenda Quintana. I'm a board member for Arts and Culture El Dorado. I just wanted to thank you for your continued partnership and support. And why are you oh, I thought you were making a face at me. Oh, okay. I just want, I know. Well, unfortunately, not all the board members could be here, but I wanted to come up and thank you personally for your partnership and your continued support, and we're looking for a continued partnership with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Anyone else?
Good evening, Vice Mayor, City Council, Ryan Carter. I appreciate the input. I am speaking tonight in my official capacity as a member of the Historic Review Special Committee of the Planning Commission. Time constraints and scheduling precluded us from having this item come before the full Planning Commission tonight to give their support for this, but I just wanted to let you guys know, full disclosure, I am on the board of the Heritage Association. Therefore, I will not address the proposal in front of you tonight specifically, but just address the necessity of updating and expanding the historic resources inventory. For context, today is my grandson's 2nd birthday. Happy birthday, Oliver. So I'm officially a grandfather of a 2-year-old. This inventory was completed when I was 8 years old. It is desperately in need of attention, so I appreciate the attention that this item is getting. The Planning Department, and by extension the Planning Commission, regularly utilize this document for determining site plan reviews per zoning ordinance, and I just want to support the effort to update and expand this important document, and I appreciate Councilman Clarici, your offer to assist with that effort, and I look forward to this project going forward and an increase in the energy locally for history and the preservation of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Vice Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Jacob Rigoli. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the El Dorado County Historic Society, of which I'm a board member and its treasurer. And I just wanted to offer our support formally on behalf of our president, Jill Kearney. We believe very strongly in the importance of revisiting the historic inventory. And we also bring some very talented and very well-qualified individuals to this matter also. We would extend our partnership. We do believe that the Heritage Association is capable of carrying this project forward, especially if it is partnering with some of the other organizations, for example, the El Dorado County Historical Society. Myself, for example, I would offer, I'm a Project Management Institute certified project manager, and we have a lot of project management that's obviously needed with an effort that's like this. We also have several doctorates in education who bring their expertise in historic inventory and resources to bear. So we're quite confident that we have the resources to accomplish this insofar as contributing members and through this partnership. And we are very much willing to step up and step forward to help partner together with the Heritage Association to make this happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jacob.
Good evening, pardon me. Good evening, Madam Vice Chair and members of the council. Michael Friend, Chairman of the City Planning Commission. First on the item of the public arts, I'm very excited, enthused, and honored to be a member of the steering committee for the Public Arts Project. I think the work that is going on there and the objectives that are being put forth and the community involvement are excellent. And I'm very excited about the value that this project is going to bring to the city, and strongly encourage your support for the funding as requested. With regards to the historic district, and I first have to commend publicly Commissioner Carter and Commissioner Smith, who are serving as a special advisory committee to the Planning Commission dealing with historic districts and matters of concern with regards to historic districts. As Councilmember Clarici noted, Commissioner Smith is just enthusiastic and just a fountain of knowledge. And the work that these two gentlemen have done so far for the commission really needs to be recognized. There wasn't necessarily full agreement to set up a special advisory committee initially, but since their work of the past couple of months, all of the commissioners concur with the value that they're bringing. As Commissioner Carter mentioned, the commission did not have the opportunity to review and approve for your consideration the proposal that came this evening. And I, as chair, I would concur with some of the observations which have been made with regards to the funding amounts and the accountability and so on and so forth, and the detail which really should follow a request of this nature. I would ask that the council clearly prioritize the need to update the historic inventory. Regardless of what else we might do, that really is essential. And whether or not, I'm sure that we will discuss it at our special meeting at the end of this month, but I think that is something that we really need to move forward on, not necessarily as part of this proposal, but it should be a priority. With regards to both of these items, what they do share in common is that they're going to bring great value to the city of Placerville. And I'm very excited and proud to be a participant in both of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
But wait, there's more. Just to warn you, I'm not going to talk about the inventory. I wanted to talk about arts and culture because it's masterfully headed by somebody who's very gifted and a wonderful proposal. But what convinces me is the energy that was in that room. I met so many creative people who described so many creative projects. And it's that energy that you're not going to see when you look at that proposal. I don't care how much detail is there. It's the energy in the room that was particularly exciting and the ideas that were just popping up. Again, that's not in your written material. But that's what's exciting to look forward to, is the kind of creative energy that exists throughout this community. So I look forward and support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. Further comments, questions, discussion? Oh, Cleve, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, can I clarify the one question? So the city, back when we originally started talking navigation center with the county, the city and the county made a request to the city to contribute towards the navigation center, and I think it was a little more than what we have here currently. I think it was this the original amount, Dave? 222. There was about 280,000, I think, or 285 was the original number. And that was when we were looking at Perks Court as a site for the navigation center. We were working closely with the county on that. The county subsequently decided that was not the right location, and they selected the new location, which is the existing facility, the temporary facility they're in, and then the construction of the new facility. Our discussions with them after that, when they made that move, was their analysis showed that the funding they had for that from outside sources, from the state, et cetera, was sufficient to build that facility, and this funding request from the city was no longer necessary. So that is why that's being proposed. We're only proposing to liquidate $71,000 to cover this cost. The remainder of that money is still shown as part of that project, even though it was designated for that. It none of it was ever encumbered. So it's still sitting in the city bank, if you will, for that purpose. So,
thank you, Cleve. David? Nicole?
I don't have any further comments. I mean, I think I'm in favor of proceeding with approving the public arts plan tonight and deferring a decision on the other proposal from the Heritage Association.
John?
Yes. No, I was reading that. No, I agree. I don't want to, don't make no mistake. I'm very excited about the Heritage Association's proposal, and I think it's necessary. I just think we need to button it up a little bit. And then, like I said, we're going to have this discussion at the end of the month. So yes, yeah, liquidate the ARPA for the homeless, 15 grand to the arts folks, and we'll defer. So I could make them.
So then is the motion to just liquidate the 15,000 to cover that? Yeah, to cover.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to be clear about that. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. So I just wanted to make clear, understand that the motion would be to liquidate $15,000 for the ARPA funds and appropriate that to the Arts and Culture El Dorado. Right. And then we will table the Heritage Association discussion till after our August meeting.
Right. Yes.
That's my motion.
I will second that motion.
Regina, roll call.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we will take a 15-minute break right now. Come back at 7:35.
The police guy is in the chief. I have a whistle.
All right, can everybody take their seats, please?
This is going to be.
All right, we will move on to 12.3, review and approve a policy for the bell tower use by the public. Mr. Morris, it has your name on it.
Thank you. Mr. Zeller actually prepared this, but he's actually out of town on vacation right now, visiting his son I think in Canada somewhere. But anyway, he's off. So I told him I would handle this item. So for some time now, we've been talking about bringing back a policy for use of the bell tower, whether it be using it at all or using nothing. And part of the issue also has been whether or not the use of actually just the bell tower or closing the street around the bell tower, not Main Street, but that little, we call it the triangle, the triangle around the bell tower. And the difficulty for that is the issue that it creates is it closes down the exit from the garage when you do that. And so it does create a little bit of a traffic issue when things like that are done. Currently, we kind of have two events that the council has approved to allow the full closure of that area, the triangle area, and that is the girls' night out and the Taste of Maine, thank you, that is done by the high school band. And those are the only two that we currently consider kind of that the council has approved for closure of the entire area. Now, with that said, prior to this policy coming forth, we did close the bell tower triangle this last week for a special event, which was the filming of a TV series of a Food Network show that went on, and staff made that decision on our own based on information that we had, felt it was important and would give some publicity, notoriety to our small town to have that event go on there. And so we worked with them to make that happen. In addition, we, not too long ago, received a request from Councilmember Clarici to consider allowing weddings to be held at the bell tower. And it was recommended that the Economic Advisory Committee take a look at that and see if it was something that was feasible. So what we did tonight with this staff report, we've combined those two together, and we have a policy that the Economic Advisory Committee put together just for weddings at the bell tower. And again, they're very concerned, and their position is that they would not close down the entire triangle for this. So traffic would still move as normal through the area. You'll note in the policy what they've stated is that they would only allow 5 people actually in the bell tower at any one time. Their position is it'd be the officiant, the bride and the groom, and 2 witnesses, and that's all you get in the bell tower. Anybody else that comes to view this event would have to stand be on the sidewalk and could listen and view it from there. And again, the reason is, we recently had the issue with the farmers market in that location and the concern of businesses with closing down that area completely and what went on during that time. And so they were aware of that and wanted to avoid creating a situation that would bring that back again. And that's the reason they said, can we do this? Is there a way this can be done without closing down that area and having an impact on the businesses that way? The idea behind this was kind of to look at similar situations where you see, and mostly in larger cities, I would say, where there's the weddings in the courthouse and et cetera, and they'll schedule times and do those. And they actually do those fairly quickly too. They don't have a lot of time. They, do the ceremony and they're done and they're gone. And that's kind of the what they looked at for this, and that's why you see that they allocated just 1 hour for for the ceremony is what they would have time to do. Now, what they do after that, obviously going to other facilities or whatever, could be done on their own. They proposed, the Peak proposed a fee of $500 for this 1 hour ceremony with a $100 deposit for any damages. And they wanted to emphasize that funds collected from the events would go towards preservation and maintenance and repair of the historic bell tower as a plus to that. The other policy that we also is for general use of the bell tower, accepting those wedding ceremonies. And this one was a little trickier. We did, and this was done by staff based on information that we have gathered over time. And again, they list the 2 events that would close the bell tower and the triangle, and those could go on as planned, and they can be approved by staff unless there's some other issue that comes up. I will note that this year we did have a request to consider Girls' Night Out to be allowed to close the entire street. We did not feel that was appropriate for this year because it came in kind of late, but we did tell them that if they want to come back and request it again next year, it could be considered as part of a larger discussion with the city council, but we couldn't make that decision as a staff. And they understand that, and they're moving forward with that in that manner. But we also felt that perhaps, and this is open for discussion and council discretion on this, there may be other events, let's say, other than the weddings, and other than closing the entire triangle, there may be an event that maybe we say, maybe that is good, and it may be something like maybe playing music in the bell tower or other things. And we had a hard time actually coming up with what those may be, but there may be things that may come up. And so we looked at that and said, if we can establish something where at least we make it available, it would not close down, again, it would not close down the triangle. So the street sidewalks would still be open, but it would allow somebody to rent it for a certain event that they would use that for. And there's some conditions on that. You'll note that it's a lesser amount. They can do it for up to 4 hours, and it's only $300. And our reason for that the committee felt was it has to show that it's providing a positive community benefit. So such as music in the bell tower. So if they were playing music there that's open to the public and it's inviting people to come downtown, you could consider that that's a benefit to the community, that's enhancing the community. So I will admit our discussions and how we've developed this, we're getting there. There are still some questions about, does that work? Do we even want to allow those other events that don't close down the triangle? Is it feasible to do that? And so there are questions, and we're open for comments from the public, from the council, et cetera, to see where we might go with this. And happy to answer any questions you might have on any of this.
Okay, I just got to know one thing with the weddings. Are we going to provide John the Clarici to, go ahead since it's his idea? So anyway, yeah, no, actually, on all seriousness, I like what you guys are going after here, but I was playing this with this little drawing because you were talking about just people in the bell tower, not closing off the whole triangle. I do know at one time there was talk about at least with the farmers market, that they used to have the one lane open so they could go out and turn and all of that. Right. Well, and I do know there's also the commercial parking space that's right next to the bell tower.
Right.
So, I was kind of just playing with a little drawing. Well, what if we did like a little square, if they needed a little bit more than just the bell tower, at least that would keep the traffic open all the way around and keep the, garage being able to exit. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Right, yeah, you got a little square little thing here. We may be able to, shut down the left-hand turn and just leave the right turn open, but at least everybody be able to get out of the garage. So it's an idea that you could possibly use for, something that may require more than 5 people standing in the bell tower, but still not shut down the whole section.
I would like to explore, you mentioned that, and I should have talked to the city engineer before I did this, but I would like to explore, I think I've mentioned it possibly to her, would there ever be the potential when we close that triangle to reverse the flow coming out of the garage so it goes the opposite direction down the alley? Now, big vehicles, that turn may be a problem for them, but I mean, we don't allow real tall vehicles in there anyway, so that's limited, but there are issues I know with the 20-minute parking that are in that alley. If we could figure something out like that, we potentially could remove that issue so it could still allow for that parking lot there. But that's for another day. I just want to mention that.
Watching Rebecca
I'll have
pull her
that
hair
discussion. No, the main concern is that turning radius coming out of there and whether or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a vehicle size that would be an issue. It'd be more about the driver.
True. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyway, go ahead.
Other questions, comments?
I'd like to just comment because this is an idea that I had, but it was actually sparked. It was funny. It was when we were talking to some folks on Main Street, the three of us actually, and we got talking about the bell tower, and Cleve said, I get calls for people that want to get married at the bell tower. And of course I went, oh, well, that's very interesting. And then it reminded me of, I did some consulting work for the city of San Francisco. That's an entirely different environment, but I was in City Hall at the grand staircase. Now it's the city and county of San Francisco, so they do marriage licenses in that building. And I sat there I was in between meetings. I probably sat there for about an hour, and I don't want to say I didn't count the number of ceremonies, but they obviously had signed all the paperwork. They came out, they had a ceremony. It was all very choreographed, boom, 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 boom. They came down, they got a picture taken on that beautiful staircase that's in City Hall, and then they were gone. And I asked somebody who was standing there that worked in the building, I said, how often do they do this? And she goes, all day long. They just rend these people through there, and they seem to be having a good time. And so that just got me thinking about this. And thank you very much to the Peak for taking an idea and running with it. So I think there's all sorts of possibilities, but maybe we should just sort of start it small and go from there and see how it works. And it may be a total dud. Who knows? We also, hopefully, if it did generate some money, we could start to fix the bell tower because it's looking pretty shaky right now. So anyway, I just want to give the folks a little bit of the background on what motivated me to even think about it. I just sat there and I looked at that and I went, wow. And this whole thing made sense to me. Anyway, so that's it.
Nicole?
I guess I would just say, I always am sort of on the same page here of sort of the safety concerns with anything that involves people on the paved area of the street. So, if we're staying inside the bell tower itself, and we're not creating a nuisance that attracts people to go out into the street even when it's not closed, I definitely think that's something that makes sense. And we put the condition on Taste of Maine this year for having some security to make sure that people are not walking on the street side of the barricades or sitting on the barricades or doing kind of unsafe things that put them in the way of traffic. So I'd like to kind of continue that for Taste of Maine and Girls Night Out, but I don't want to, shut down the ability for them to do that or to have someone else requested and it come to us for approval, but on a case-by-case basis that we see anything else, and only Girls Night Out and Taste of Maine are sort of ministerial approved at the city council level. So those are kind of my initial thoughts prior to public comment.
Yeah, some of the thoughts I had was, do we need a crosswalk there? We talk about public safety and that. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but I kind of agreed with John in the fact that I thought we should maybe start with the weddings first. We just said don't have the farmer's market there. If we start allowing a whole other group of things, we've kind of just, have we negated what we did? In addition to that, the staff report mentions live music and recorded music. Well, the problem at Sourdough was when they had music, people were dancing in the streets. So I don't know what makes you think that you're going to play it at the bell tower and people aren't going to dance in the streets. I think we would have to look at some sort of closure, maybe the way David was talking about or something. yeah, I think we should just start with the weddings. I really love the idea of the money being used for repairing the bell tower, so I like the idea of just running those weddings through. I don't know how popular it will or won't be. One of the things I wanted to add, you know, we always do a reevaluation after 1 year, but we have not talked to the merchants yet. We don't have any idea how this is going to work, so I'd really like to see us reevaluate it after 3 events to see if it's working or it's not working, not say it has to go for an entire year because we didn't think about things that happened that are like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about that. That's terrible. So I'd like to see us do that. And the last little change I wanted to make is it allows the sole discretion of the community service director. I'd just like to see the city manager also approve that. I like to see a 2-person approval on new things that we haven't talked about. Those are kind of my comments.
Yeah, and I had one other thought. I know I brought this up before, but we just talked about a public arts plan, and you know, the bell tower is potentially a location for public art, and that's something that, you know, we haven't really addressed here in this policy. I think that's fine. We can look at it going forward, but I also don't want to like limit our ability to do public art at the bell tower because we're utilizing it so frequently for weddings or music that that's not an option anymore.
Any more thoughts, comments? No? Okay. We will open this to public comment.
First, thanks to Regina for passing the football tonight, back and forth. I just wanted to give, once again, sorry, Ryan Carter, speaking as a citizen now in a no other official capacity. I just want to give my support to this policy. I think it's a great step forward for the city. I'm really intrigued about the wedding idea. I certainly would not want to get married at the bell tower with Harleys driving by, but that's not my choice. I'm really intrigued to see how that goes forward. I also noticed that in the peak proposal that the reassessment was not carried forward into the bell tower policy that was presented to you. I do think that we definitely need to have a reassessment after a couple of events just to make sure that this is really working. And I wanted to give my compliments on the television program last week. That was phenomenal. I'm sure when it's released, it's going to give us great publicity, bring more tourists, bring more people into town. So those are the kind of closures of the triangle, as we're calling it now, that I think are completely appropriate and has a huge benefit to our town. So anyway, great job, and I look forward to seeing how all this works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, I have similar comments. And speaking of the closure that we had on Saturday for the filming of the TV show for Food Network, I know it was supposed to be hush-hush, I guess, so that the mobs from the outside wouldn't show up to be on TV. But let me tell you, as a merchant, it would have been nice to get this much notification, okay? Because it does impact our businesses. So if there could be a better communication between the city and the merchants, that'd be great. But thank you on that one. But some thoughts about this. This is 2023. It's not bride and groom. How about couple? It could be bride and bride. It could be groom and groom. So I think we should say couple. The other thing is, what about there being help me, like this microphone. How about magnification? Because look, if you have 5 people on the bell tower and they bring 10 or 12 of their closest friends, and you think they're going to stand in front of the newsstand or in front of sourdough, if they can't hear, they're going to want to be able to hear. They're going to come into the street, and you're going to have the same problem you tried to get rid of with farmers market. People are, got to be realistic about this. So are you going to allow, what's the right word, a microphone? And how loud and for how long? Because I think that's a safety issue. And as far as using that space that the police generally use and the delivery trucks generally use that you were talking about, David, okay, Homeland Security. You put people on the street, you have to put barricades. They have to be barricades that a Ford F-250 cannot go through ever since Charlottesville Just talk to Terry Zeller. So you're talking about a big expense to put those barricades, those water-filled barricades up on the street. So just remember that, right? That's why it's so expensive when we have these street closure events to put those water-filled barricades up. It's to protect people. So you can't just willy-nilly have them on the street. The other thing I wanted to say, how much time do I have? A minute? You know, as far as music at the bell tower, don't we have that guy, or for the longest time we had that Elvis dude, that Elvis impersonator, right? Who did music. And it was something like just to make downtown a happy place. And at the holiday time, don't they have that guy doing holiday music at the bell tower? Yes, they do. They have in the past. So that's just another application. And you want them to pay $300? I don't know. Because it is a benefit to the downtown. And the last thing, yeah, someone mentioned it in 15 seconds. For Third Saturday Art Walk, to bring that up again, we used to work with Dana and have music, and that was part of Third Saturday Art Walk. And then the city decided, yeah, you don't have a permit, and it's going to be multiple hundreds of dollars to get it, and it kind of killed that because worried about dancing in the street. And so if somehow it can be addressed that we could have music and barricade it off so we don't have to worry about dancing in the street. So we could have music again outside.
Thank you, Ruth.
Sue Rodman, Placerville. No. This is a dumb idea. We just got the farmers market out of there with all of the risk to the public that created. And now you want to pull in something else? Taste on Main and a girls' night out is one thing, but to have weddings any old day or every weekend, I don't think this is appropriate. And I think if I were part of the farmers market, I would sue us if we got rid of them and the chaos that they caused, just so we can have more chaos from something else. Music on for Christmas and stuff, that's one thing, but to have this business of trying to make Placerville the wedding capital for the bell tower, we've already got a really nice wedding venue over at the county buildings. They have a very nice downstairs where they do weddings all the time, and it's really pretty. Leave it alone. You don't have to have everything everywhere. This is a dumb idea. I vote no.
Thank you, Sue.
Kathy Lishman again, musical microphones tonight. Regina's getting her exercise. I like the idea, if you're going to do it, of not just signing people up for a month for indefinitely, but seeing how it works, one or two times. And it's right. But to add a speaker to the wedding so that everybody hears what's being said, I don't think that's necessary. And the attendees probably can't hear, and cars will come through and make a U-turn. I made a U-turn there today myself. Cars will come through, and that will be annoying. So I guess the people can decide whether they like it or not after it happens, but I see that it could have a lot of problems. Music for an event, I would think, an event that's sanctioned downtown would be fine, or for Christmas, but people blasting music out of the bell tower is kind of annoying sometimes to the peaceful town, the ambiance of the town, because not everybody likes the same music. And just so you know, I think the last time improvements were made to the bell tower, Community Pride raised the money many, many years ago. And the ones that recently Well, not that recently. In the last few years, there was an article in the Mountain Democrat about the bell tower and its history. They totally left out the work that Community Pride had done on it. And I'm very curious about what's happening. I know there was at one time you were going to make improvements to it, and I'm curious to know what's happening with that. And if you can't rely on a wedding at $500 to raise enough money to do the work to fix up the bell tower.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we'll bring it back to council for further discussion. Wow, you guys are so
okay.
talkative.
So, well, actually, yes, I do remember the Homeland issues, and on my little drawing, I know you guys couldn't see it out there, but I did draw barricades around what I was talking about. So I was taking the safety into consideration.
I'm Sue. I'm crushed. I was on a roll. There for a while, and this is an idea. It's an experiment. I mean, I live in this town. I know that people drive up and down Main Street, and sometimes they make noise while they're doing it. And I know that this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I don't think we're doing this for everybody. We're doing it for some hardy souls that might decide they want to be married at the bell tower. And if they go to the bell tower to go, hey, honey, isn't this a great place to get married? They're going to look around and go, there's a lot of traffic around here, So I always feel that people are smarter than sometimes we give them credit for, and that they'll know the environment that they're moving into. And it may be a total, unmitigated disaster. And if it is, we won't do it again. And one of the things, getting to the farmers market, the vision of this is that it does not have that kind of impact. So if you can get in there, do your ceremony, and then leave, that hopefully we won't be having that kind of impact. If it turns out that it is that kind of impact, you know what we'll do? We'll stop doing it, because we don't want to seem like we're being hypocritical. And I think we'll know that. We'll know if it's even successful or not relatively quickly. And then we'll know if it works, probably on the heels of finding out the answer to the first question. So anyway, it's not intended to fix all the ills of the bell tower. I mean, that doesn't either. I mean, even if you ran some numbers on it and had X number of them, unless you started running a lot of them through there, that bell tower needs probably a little bit more work than these are going to do. But you know what? It wouldn't hurt. If it's successful and we make some money, it won't hurt, hopefully. Anyway, those are my thoughts. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add. I mean, I think certainly, I guess I'm willing to try it. I'm concerned about the people going out in the street. So, me and my safety always on this item. So I mean, that's my primary concern, is the, sort of attractive nuisance and people deciding they want to see what's going on, whether they're, trying to be there for the wedding or not. They see a wedding going on, maybe they walk out and, take a look and don't pay attention when they're walking out in the street. But I mean, I'm willing to do 1, 2, 3 and see if that happens, and then reassess, and hopefully nobody gets hit by a car in that trial period.
I mean, the way people walk around the bell tower presently, I don't think you need to have a wedding out there to get people to walk like idiots. I mean, we see it all the time. How many times have you almost killed somebody who's taken a picture of the dummy hanging outside of the hangman's tree, and they're standing in the middle of Main Street like they're in Disneyland? Safety is always a concern. We shouldn't make light of it. I don't know what's going to happen. And you know what? If they don't behave, then you know what? We'll stop doing it. So.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation with let's detail the.
Let's change the wording to couple.
Well, thank you. Yes, and also
reevaluate.
Yeah, let's put a little detail after X number of dates. Is 3 enough? I mean, is that enough? Is it too many? 3. Let's make it 3. The number shall be 3.
Okay.
I'll second.
Then, John, you had said earlier you just wanted to do the weddings. Are you approving the entire staff recommendation?
Yeah, well, okay.
Just
Well,
one
no, I'm
clarification
sorry.
because you said one thing. And
Okay, I'd like, okay, the measures for Girls' Night Out and Taste of Maine, those are approved. The weddings, as we discussed, and I think everything else we put on the side for the moment.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarification.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then the last thing is I wanted for you to consider a second approval from city manager.
Yes,
Have a
yes,
two,
yes,
two
yes, yes,
staff approval
yes,
rather
yes.
than just one person taking the
Right.
There.
But that's for the other events. That we're
That's
not
for the
gonna
other
do
things
right
that we're
now.
going to kind of put
Then
on.
never mind.
So that- right?
Yes,
We're
you're right.
taking-
That's
we're
not
taking that
applicable
off.
if we're taking out the rest. You're right. That's correct.
I just want to, before you do your final, I want to make one point on this.
Yes.
This event we had this last week, the filming that went on, without us holding a special meeting for you to approve that, it probably wouldn't have happened. Because their deadline came up and it was after our council meeting when we got all the details that they really wanted to move forward with it. And when I said, well, you know, I even suggested, can we hold a special meeting for it? And they said, well, if you need to do that, we don't want to go through that process. We would probably move on. It was their comment. So I'm not saying to change anything, but I just wanted to make that point. There may be something from time to time that come up like that, but
So every single commercial and filming item comes before the city council? You don't ever make that discretion?
If you want to close that triangle under this policy now, it would have to, yes.
Gotcha.
And again, I'm not asking you to change anything.
No, it's
I
worth
kind of made
considering
that
now.
decision on my own because I thought it was something that felt we would do, but with this new policy, this would not allow me to do that.
So would we like to put a clause under closure and bell tower triangles to give the city manager authority to close for filming and because are we going to say no to
now we
filming
might be getting a
events?
little too specific.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
getting a little inside
All right.
baseball there.
I'm not sure how to resolve it, but I just wanted to let you know that that came up. My preference would always be to say, let's quickly hold a special meeting and see if you can do it. That's what my position is
All right,
right now.
then, well, I'm fine with leaving it the way it is then.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions, amendments, conversation, a second?
Just on the Girls' Night Out and the Taste of Maine for triangle closures, I would like the same condition we put on Taste of Maine this year in terms of having a security person that ensures people are not sitting on barricades or walking on the street side of them.
And we can include that as part of the event application.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need to be written in the policy. We can make sure that that happens. That was a good recommendation, so.
And the Taste of Maine people, they enforced it. I was sitting on a barricade and these two very nice young ladies came over and told me that I can't do that. And so it worked out. It worked well.
David?
I'm good. I still second it.
Oh, you second. Okay, just making sure. So you second as he
I did.
outlined.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
we have a
Again,
first and a second.
He did.
Do we need a roll call or can we?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. And we will move on to 12.4, review of current no parking ordinance and list of streets. Mr. Morris.
So this one, I probably shouldn't have been here. It's just an informational item. At the last meeting, it was requested that this be brought forward when we were discussing actually the accessory dwelling units and the no parking or the on-site parking issue that was brought up tonight during that discussion. So I don't have anything to add. This is just for your information, and I would recommend that we just can bring this back as part of your discussion when we bring back that ordinance back for consideration. So unless you have any other recommendations, that was the sole purpose of this item, so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? Public comment? None? Okay, we'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
we really don't need,
Oh, we don't,
we don't
oh,
really,
okay,
we don't really
have an
need a
action,
motion
all
on it.
right.
Like I say, it should have just been
That
informational.
we received this. We have received and filed this. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
12.5, City Council to consider rejecting the bids received June 20th, 2023, and re-advertise the construction contract documents for public bidding for the Broadway Sidewalks project. Ms. Neves.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. Broadway has two key projects that will be delivered for the community, specifically the Broadway Sidewalks project and the Broadway Maintenance project. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd like to explain a little bit about the background on both of those projects for folks in the public. The project before you this evening is for the Broadway Sidewalks project, which is funded primarily by the Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP for short. The work includes improvements to the city's storm drainage system, water distribution systems and services, minor sewer work, and select areas of paving, as well as curb, gutter, and sidewalk. When the project was analyzed, it was discovered that significant work was still needed for the infrastructure on Broadway, and it was not in the public's best interest to continue adding the remaining improvements in a federally funded project, but warranted a separate, locally funded project, which ultimately became known as the Broadway Maintenance Project. The Broadway Maintenance Project, which is intended to be delivered concurrently or following the Broadway Sidewalks work, includes additional improvements to the city's water distribution system, realignment of the public sewer located on Broadway from Carson to the intersection of Main Street and Mosquito Road, CIPP lining, cast-in-place pipe lining of select segments of the storm drain system, and significant repaving along with thermoplastic striping and delineation on Broadway. That project is scheduled to be released for bidding this fall and opens bids in October of this year. You may recall we first bid the Broadway Sidewalks project in April of this year and received only one bid from Central Valley Asphalt in the amount of $1.896969 million. For various reasons related to the federal project delivery process, Caltrans recommended rejecting the one bid and rebidding the project. On May 23rd, City Council authorized staff to rebid the project. Staff then re-released the project for public bid, opened bids on June 20th, and we received two bids, and they were as follows. B&M Builders at $1.9 million, and Central Valley Asphalt, which was also conveniently the bidder on the first round of bidding, at $2.187. They were the sole bidder prior. However, following a bid analysis, it was determined that it was not in the public's best interest to award the project at this time for the following reasons. One, the project's available budget is $1.966355, which, if awarded to bidder one, leaves an insufficient contingency amount for unforeseen conditions in the field. And bidder two's second bid increased by over 13%, but their bid proposal this time was found to be in good standing and compared to the first bid opening in April. Additionally, staff had discussions with both bidders where it was revealed that the timing of the bid and the immediate start of construction was not something that was easy to deliver on, which may have added to the increased price for bidder number two specifically, and both suggested starting construction in the spring of 2024. This project has been consistently about finding and achieving the right timing for delivery. Staff contacted the Highway Safety Improvement Program and regarding the additional funding shortfall for Caltrans HSIP staff graciously recognized the importance of the project and has committed to providing additional funding for the project at the start of the next fiscal year, which starts in October. The same month, we're opening bids for Broadway maintenance. In accordance with typical bidding procedures, the bids were received will be expiring 60 days from the date of opening, which occurs on the 19th of this month, 2 months before we receive the additional funds from HSIP to award. So for this reason, staff is requesting City Council reject the two bids received on June 20th and re-advertise the construction documents, which is now scheduled to occur concurrently with the Broadway Maintenance Project, which is how it was always intended. So construction will be starting in spring of 2024 with this intended schedule. That concludes staff's report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions from the council at this moment?
Is there any chance that if this thing is bid concurrently, that one firm would do the whole thing?
There's a high chance of that, actually. There's a lot of contractors that have expressed interest more so in the Broadway maintenance.
Yeah, right.
contract
That makes
versus
sense
the
to
federally
me.
funded
And then
Broadway
the sidewalks is more of a specialty item.
Yes, and there's some, federal funding does have some restrictions in terms of, certain criteria met.
Right.
So it does, it is a little bit more paperwork, labor intensive.
Right.
But, when they repay the project or they pay almost 89% of a cost of the project.
You'll file some paperwork.
That's right.
Okay.
We can fill out a form.
So is it my understanding that the extra money is more than enough for the contingency for bidder number 2?
No.
Okay.
No, well, not at this time. So the additional funds would be, if we were to get it right now, if those funds were to be allocated right now, we would have enough money to award to bidder 1, not bidder 2.
Okay.
Bidder 2, this round, which was bidder 1 the first round, is out of our price range at this moment.
What? I'm sorry. Any more?
No. Go ahead.
What's the engineer's estimate on the maintenance project? Approximately, it doesn't have to be.
Last I looked, it was around 3.6.
Oh, yeah.
We did not want to federalize that.
Oh, no. But you could run them concurrently, and then you'd get, I like
You get economies of scale savings.
Yeah, I think.
Very similar in work. That's why I went through the effort of trying to explain all the nuances of each project, because they really do have a lot of overlapping, but the sequence and the timing of delivering it, there was no way that we felt good about delivering a sidewalks project when we knew that there was infrastructure under the road surface that needed to be addressed, which the sidewalk does disrupt some of that in terms of services and things like that. And there was no way that we felt good about doing that kind of disruption and not addressing the larger issues.
Sure. So if you do it concurrently, you'll have everything open at the same time.
Correct.
And then the fewer surprises.
That's the hope.
Are okay, got it. Thank you.
The other thing, too, that staff considered, I apologize, the other thing, too, that staff considered about awarding, let's say that they decided, oh, you know what, we'll keep our bids from going stale, or we found a way around that. The other part of this is then that would put construction starting in the fall. And I already saw traffic backing up this past weekend on Broadway from Highway 50 bypass highway users. So that makes it challenging.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Sure.
Okay, we'll open this to public comment.
Sue Rodman, member of the Measure H, Measure L committee. And we have the best engineering department that I have ever seen in a city. And to do this is perfect. I mean, it's to put the 2 projects together so that they can be accomplished at the same time. It makes it better for the contractors. It makes it better for the city. It makes it better for the traffic. What more do you want? You've got all the wins in the world. This is a good one.
Thank you, Sue. Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll bring this back to council. Further comments, questions? Entertain a motion.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
What? Should have had Rebecca call the roll.
That's why it's called the football.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to 12.6. Consider appropriating funds for the Smith Flat Road Storm Drain and Paving Project and approve an agreement for engineering services with REY Engineering Incorporated for said project. Ms. Neves.
Thank you. And I was afraid I wasn't going to get my steps in today. Good evening again. The Smith Flat Road Storm Drain and Paving Project was added to the city's capital improvement program as part of the adopted budget for fiscal year 21-22. The city released a request for proposals for consultant services in March, and 2 proposals were received, one from Dokken Engineering and another one from REY Engineers. They were reviewed and ranked by a panel of 3, which found REY's proposal that demonstrated a thorough knowledge of the project through their upfront effort in collecting data to ensure their extensive understanding of the existing roadway and utilities in the project's vicinity. The consultant submitted a detailed scope of the project that includes preliminary engineering, scoping efforts, final design, and up through construction support. In short, concept to construction was thought through on this project. The fee for that total effort is $809,088. However, because the public project delivery process does take time, staff reviewed the scope and is recommending awarding the agreement and issuing a partial notice to proceed for initial tasks to allow the project to work within a previously adopted budget. The authorized work under the notice to proceed would include the preliminary engineering and specifically the utility condition assessment. Staff will return in the next fiscal year to request additional funds to complete the remaining work within the proposed contract as part of the adopted budget in the future. The current schedule shows a preliminary engineering concluding in June of '24, final design concluding in December of '24, and construction starting in spring of '25. That concludes staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rebecca. Questions from the council? No? Okay, we'll open this to public comment.
Sue Rodman, Measure H, Measure L again. This has been waiting for a long time to get done. Smith Flat Road is a mess. And so this is great to be able to go in and get this underway. So, yeah, this is a good one.
Thank you, Sue. Can you give that microphone to Regina?
Assuming there's no questions or comments.
Okay, no other public comment. We'll bring that back to council. Questions, comments from council? Further discussion? A motion?
I'll move to adopt the staff report.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye. Okay, we will move to 12.7. Consider an agreement with Camino Technologies for a web-based land management and permit tracking system for the Development Services Department. We're going to go with Mr. Rivas. It says that, Mr. Warren. I just read in the paper.
No, I understand that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. The Development Services Department is currently utilizing Approach to manage its building permit applications. Approach provides no permit tracking for planning and code enforcement, only fee and fine receipts. Approach is a Lotus Excel-based software program borrowed from the county and maintained by the assessor's office staff if we have issues. The staff person the city has utilized for quite some time is no longer employed by the county, therefore leaving the city vulnerable to any system issues. The system is antiquated, having been in use now for over 30 years. Very fortunate for the city, our building official, Mr. Greg Horsfall, has expertise in computer software and development permitting applications, having served as a liaison between the county building department and the county IT departments when he was employed with the building division over at El Dorado County. And the reason why I say that is because the Director of Development Services is technologically challenged, and as you know, I rely heavily on the expertise of others regarding any computer issue. So I feel very fortunate to have Mr. Horsfall that really was able to do a lot of the evaluations of all the various vendors that we reviewed. So Mr. Horsfall took the lead of the review team and reviewed 6 different vendors, and he developed a criteria allowing for a uniform means of evaluating each based on the expected department requirements and goals, and shown in your staff report as attachment C. The total cost of implementation of the Camino permitting and licensing system is a total of $44,900 for the first year. Ongoing subscription costs will be at $19,900 per year for a contract term of 5 years. The City Council adopted the fiscal year 21-22 operating budget, which appropriated $72,600 for the purchase of a permitting system for the Development Services Department. The request included an annual hosting fee of $5,000, which is much less than the annual $19,900 annual subscription fee. Staff would recommend that we would return to the council with a proposed, what we would call a technology fee, that's the term used by other jurisdictions, that may be applied to all permit applications to cover the costs of the permitting system subscription cost. Staff is recommending that the council adopt the resolution to approve an agreement with Camino Technologies for the purchase of the land management and permitting tracking system for a one-time, not to exceed amount of $44,900 and an annual subscription fee of $19,900 for the 5-year term. And then 2, authorize the city manager to execute the same and any other associated documents for said purchase. That concludes staff's report. Happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thanks, Pierre. Do we have questions from the council? No? Okay, we'll open this to public comment. Questions, comments from the public?
Sue Rodman, one-time computer geek for the Forest Service. And I know it's really important to have your systems up to date so that they actually work for you. And I think that Pierre's suggestion of having the permits pay a technology fee is a good one. And none of the good systems come without a cost. And if we're running on stuff that's 30 years old and it crashes, you're in much deeper trouble. So I think this is a good idea.
Thanks, Sue. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion or a motion.
In an effort to get this into the 21st century before it ends, I will move the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this moves us to item 13, council reports from other agency meetings. El Dorado County Transit Authority, that's me. We approved a My Budget policy update, and we made recommendations for a passenger code of conduct policy. El Dorado County Transportation Commission.
We had a meeting that might have been 15 minutes long, and I don't even remember what we did. It was so fast. So it was just a bunch of basically accepting reports and that sort of thing.
We approved pedestrian and bicycle
thank you.
funds to improve four locations on Pleasant Valley Road.
That's right. There was something important. Thank you for writing that down.
You're welcome.
That was the one thing I didn't grab was
I
my
got
notes
you.
from the meeting.
Okay, LAFCO? That's you.
We did not meet.
We did not meet.
Okay.
We did it, but I will tell you, we had a meeting of our the ad hoc committee that's doing the MSR work and the sphere of influence stuff, and we have a revised draft of the MSR for the city, and I saw it and I looked at it and I passed it to staff so they could see it and look at it and make additional comments. We are not having a meeting at the end of this month, but we will be having a meeting at the end of next month, and I will not be here. And we should all be thankful we don't live in the Cameron Park CSD, because that place is a hot mess right now. So, yeah.
Okay, we'll move to SACOG, and Michael is not here tonight, so we will move on to Pioneer Community Energy.
Yeah, the last meeting that we had, we went over some new marketing because of a new launch of a new website. We went over some updates on government bills coming through. Nothing to report that's anything of craziness at this point, because they're still trying to figure out what they are going to put in the bills. And that was it. And we are not meeting this month at all, so the next meeting is until next month, which I believe I am gone for, but I will double check. I think actually John and I are both gone at that meeting. We discussed this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The Placerville Fire Safe Council, of course, they're always looking for volunteers for their multiple committees, and I would say the one exciting thing is they're going to get a FireWise accounting form online by the end of August, which will allow everyone to start reporting and helping them with that FireWise, keeping that FireWise, what do I want to say? Accredited, yeah,
Yes.
FireWise communities
Very
for the districts. And lastly is Opportunity Knox.
Our subcommittee for the MOU for the Navigation Center met. We provided direction to staff on the conditions we want in the agreement. Our next step will be to review that document once those conditions are added at the subcommittee level, and then it will go to the EDOK for approval. Or not, but it will go to EDOK.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll take public comment on item 13, if anyone has any. Seeing none, we'll move to item 14, requests for future agenda items.
I would like to request that we send our bed and breakfast ordinance to the Planning Commission to look at the recommendations regarding things such as potentially removing the historic home requirement, parking, and anything else that may be in that ordinance that they may want to make a recommendation to us to potentially change or keep as is.
And my understanding is that will also satisfy the, I am tired, the residential STRs. Thank you, David.
Yes, our bed and breakfast ordinance currently allows people to rent out rooms in their house through a bed and breakfast permit, but there is a condition in that, both requiring that it has to be owner occupied, that's one of the requirements, but it also requires that it be a historic home. So that's one of the things I want the Planning Commission to look at. I think it also has requirements on like number of parking spaces per room, things like that. It might be great as is, but I'd like them to consider that and then bring it back to us for a recommendation.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that? 3 council members?
Yeah, you should have at least your concurrence, so you're okay doing that?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
I'm okay with that.
That's unanimous?
I approve.
Okay, great. Any other items? No? Public comment at number 14? No? Okay, we'll move to item 15, city manager and staff reports. We will start with the receive and file July 2023 police report. Chief Wren, do you have anything you'd like to highlight? Busy? Nothing too exciting. I like that. Okay, we'll move to 12.2, receive and file July Fire Station 25 run report. Chief Cordero?
Busy.
Busy.
I would add just council's information with regards to the Cameron Park CSD. Their CSD board did about 2 weeks ago put the JP on notice. They were on a 120-day termination with the contract for their ambulance. So the JPA will be sending that back out to an internal RFP process, much like we did with Diamond Springs, to make sure we can get someone else to pick up that unit and cover that unit.
Wow. Thank you, Chief. That's a big deal. Okay, 15.3, Development Services Department Development Permitting Statistics for the month of July 2023. Pierre, do you want to highlight or comment on any of that?
I think the only comments that staff would make is we're a little bit in a slowdown. If you look at the stats from last month or this time last year, I would add, just based on a question that came about earlier, if I go to the first page there, at the bottom table, permits issued by type, we had 1 ADU permit issued in July this year.
Thank you.
I don't think we need to worry about this that much.
Anyways, happy to answer any questions you have on the statistics.
Great.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I'm one of those permits. I'm doing a major foundation repair, and my contractor was surprised and very thankful about how quickly our development services department here, building department, turned around permits. They said they've never seen anybody else turn around permits quite as quickly as we can here. So
Thank you very
kudos
much
to
for
our
that
department. Yeah.
compliment. And I would just add that I think we'll do much better with our new Camino land use management and permitting software.
Great.
Thank you very much. For that.
I'd like to add that I went in there today or yesterday, I don't remember. And because I need to get a permit to put a roof on my house on Myrtle, and they were very helpful with all the right paperwork and all the right things. So the staff was very helpful.
All good news. Okay, we'll move to 15.4. Consider and acknowledge the filing of the HDL sales tax and economic reports for the quarter ending March 31st, 2023. Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Vice Mayor No and members of the council. So not a real upbeat report, but good information. And I do want to preface this that we've had a really good couple of years, better than a lot of cities. During the pandemic, our numbers were down as far as COVID because our regulations were practical. A lot of people bought real estate during the pandemic, and that stirred our economy. So, but now things are settling down, and we're kind of entering into a slow period. And we anticipate that through the end of this calendar year, we'll continue to do that, and then we'll see an upsurge, hopefully in January, moving through 2024. So, but with that, the news is, so your general fund Bradley Burns sales tax was down by $118,000 on the cash basis, 7.4%. That included back taxes. When you take the back taxes out, both this year and last year for the first quarter of 2023, it actually ended up being $132,379 down, or 8.4%. That was primarily due to decreases in auto and transportation, which, as you know, interest rates have gone up significantly, so it's more expensive to finance a vehicle today than it was a year ago. And also your building and construction, again, because real estate slowed down, we're seeing less remodels and those kind of things, stimulating the economy. The budget assumption for that quarter was negative 1.4%, so we were conservative. We weren't conservative enough, apparently, but we assumed a $22,000 decrease, and it ended up being $110,000. So the difference, the delta, is about $110,000, or 7 percentage points lower than what we budgeted. El Dorado County was also down by 5.8%, Sacramento Region 3.5%, so we're not alone. And even statewide was negative 1.1%. Positive news, we appreciate all of our businesses in town, especially our top 25. And we added this quarter Mobile, Save Mart, and Shell. And then Placerville, Polaris, Power and Tool, Sierra Home Designs, and Western Refining Retail dropped off that list, the top 25. Still doing well, but off the 25. And then similar to Bradley Burns, your add-on taxes H, J, and L were also down. Not as bad, but Measure J, for example, was down by $55,789 on the cash basis, or 13.6%. And then when you remove the back taxes, it was about a $46,000 decrease, or 12%. Actually, a little bit worse than Bradley Burns, but the assumption was that we would experience a 7.8% decrease, which was $30,000. We actually experienced a $46,000 decrease, but so it's about a $16,000 delta difference. And again, the decrease was primarily due to building and construction and fuel services. Fuel really, I don't know if you saw it on the graph, huge because the prices reduced and consumptions dropped slightly. That really had an impact. So on a positive note, HDL was able to recover through their auditing efforts $35,109 this year. And since 1991, they've actually recovered a little over $1.5 million for the city. And there was also some economic information in there. Unfortunately, it's slightly more pessimistic than it was last time. Not a huge impact, but they are, HDL and their economists anticipate that the economy will continue to kind of slow down through the end of this calendar year and then pick up the following year. So, so this was the first quarter of 2023. We did forecast a $1.2 million general fund surplus. I don't anticipate it's going to be 1.2 million, but I think it's going to be close to 1 million. So we're still, for the fiscal year, did pretty well, but it's just not as good as what we thought. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Questions from the council? Okay, we will open 15 up for public comment.
I would like to say that compliment our development services as well, although it's been a few years since I've done any work on my house. Every time I did, the contractors asked me, would I be willing to go pull the permits? And I said, sure, not a problem. It never took more than a couple of days. And all my contractors said, how did you do that fast? I said, our city works. So, and I would like to know what the difference was for Measure H and Measure L. Is it about the same as Measure J?
Well, he'll answer when you're done with your comments. Are you done with your comments, Sue? Okay, thank you, Sue. Okay. Mr. Warren.
Real quick, so Measure J, which is a 0.25% sales tax, when you take out the year-over-year aberrations, it was down by $46,000 or 12%. That was, my point is J is the same as H as far as the percentage. And so Measure L is double the fund. So it would have been approximately almost little over $90,000 loss for Measure L. So.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
You're welcome.
Questions, comments? Okay, we will move to item 16, which is upcoming items. I will let everyone read them for themselves. We will move to item 17, adjournment at 9:41. Thank you very much.
8:41. Scared the heck out of me.
8:41.